It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. Great show for you. We've got two noobs and a classic. The classic, Brianna Wu from the Cyber Rebellion Pack. But also Jason Kobler. He is co-founder at 404 Media, formerly editor-in-chief of Motherboard. And Eric Geller, senior cybersecurity reporter at another brand new publication called The Messenger. We're going to talk about Silicon Valley. Why are all these billionaires buying up land in the deserted Solano County, about an hour east of us? What are they up to? Why you should probably erase your phone before you try to take it across the border. And why are all those mushrooms showing up in my Instagram ads? That and a whole lot more coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 942, recorded Sunday, August 27th, 2023. Dark Brandon's Twitch. This episode of This Week in Tech is brought to you by Collide. Collide is a device trust solution for companies with Okta. Collide ensures if a device isn't trusted and secure, it can't log into your cloud apps. Visit collide.com/twit to book an on-demand demo today. And by ACI Learning. IT skills are outdated in about 18 months. Launch or advance your career today with quality, affordable, entertaining training. Individuals use the code TWIT30 for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership at go.acilearning.com/twit. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. We're going to have some fun today. First of all, let me introduce the one, the only Brianna Wu, Executive Director of Rebellion PAC, former candidate for Congress in the Massachusetts 6th. Was it the 6th? I've forgotten the district.
8th.
And
we're so much better in that 6th district. That's
game developer.
8th is good.
She is the 8th. 8th is great. 8 is great.
8 is good.
6th is sucks.
Not as good, in my view.
Great to see you, Brianna. Are those Frank's illustrations over your shoulder behind you there?
No, those are posters from Capcom CPS2 games.
Oh.
I'm obsessed with Darkstalkers, the very first one, which was kind of a Street Fighter type game of the era. And it's gorgeous artwork.
Also,
actually, let me show you this.
A speedrunner.
Parasite Eve.
What is it?
That poster right there, that is the original Parasite Eve from Japan. That cost me an obscene amount of money.
And I don't even know what it is. And that just shows you.
I'll tell you later.
What game is it?
It's a really early Squaresoft RPG. It's one of the things that made me want to go into game development because it's cinematic and gorgeous.
Oh,
it's
cool.
just an amazing game.
Very cool. You're also a speedrunner, and we will talk about Baldur's Gate 3 because apparently you have been playing that game.
Love that game. Big fan of bears.
I don't know anything about bears because I still am stuck in the mothership. But I think I've killed everybody. So me and my companions are heading out, and that's when I stopped because I thought I won't make it to the show on time if I don't stop right now. Hey, we got a couple of noobs with us. I'm thrilled to welcome Eric Geller. He's a senior cybersecurity reporter at The Messenger. Hi, Eric.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
Joining us from Washington, D.C. Tell me about The Messenger.
Well, we're a relatively new news website covering the waterfront, all things, news, health, business, tech. And I'm on our science and tech team, as you said, the cybersecurity reporter. So covering all things digital security. Nice.
Your source for unbiased news. Was this created in response to the biased news the world is full with?
Well, what I like to tell people is I'm working with a great group of journalists, and one thing that they set out to do from the very beginning is basically grab people from all over the news business. I like to say the best of the best, and then there's also me. It's a great team
very
of
humble
folks.
of you. Very nice. Yeah, thank you.
Your stuff is great. You need to be less humble. It's
okay, well,
amazing.
that worked, so thank you. Appreciate that.
So good to have you, and also new to the show, and I'm thrilled to have him with a new publication Jason Kebler is here. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how are you? Thrilled to be here. I just realized I've been looking at the wrong webcam for the last 20 minutes behind the scenes.
I'm over here. Here.
Yeah. No, I see.
Hey.
Yeah. Here, check this out. Oh, I was looking at the wrong one.
There you
much
go.
Better one.
Oh, I like that shot so much better. Yeah.
I know. I was wondering. I was like, I kept my eyes were not looking at the camera, and I was like, I don't understand what's happening. But
well, it looks
I've been
good.
felled by basic technology. Yeah.
Jason, you're going to know the name. I do, certainly, because Jason, for a long time, was editor-in-chief at Motherboard, which was the vice publication for cybersecurity and technology.
Yep.
We quoted it all the time. And then Vice kind of pulled the plug.
Well, we kind of proactively left, which is to say Motherboard still exists. There's some
but didn't they say it's like it's
still there?
They did say they were shutting it down, didn't they?
No, they're not shutting down Motherboard.
Okay.
But the company was bankrupt, is coming out of bankruptcy. It's pretty messy. But in any case, new publication called 404media.co. The joke I've been saying is the M was $100,000 because the domain name did cost $100,000 for .com.
Yikes.
Yeah. So we're going to be covering hacking, privacy, surveillance, consumer rights, and all sorts of weird internet stuff.
This is the superstars of Motherboard. It's kind of like United Artists when Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford got together and said, we don't need the studios anymore. We're going to do our own thing. But you weren't, Jason, a little chastened by the fact that Motherboard, the Vice went bankrupt? That didn't like concern you a little bit?
It did concern me a lot a bit. That's why I left.
But then you started another publication.
I started another publication, but I think, it's a hard business. We'll see.
Writers got to write.
Begging readers for money, and it's a different model.
You're joined by Emmanuel Myberg, Samantha Cole, Joseph Cox, all stalwarts at Motherboard, and I'm loving it already. 404media.co. And you have a podcast, and you have a subscription. So like the Patreon kind of style subscription, yes?
Yeah, exactly. So we're asking for reader support. Check out the website, and hopefully you'll like it. We think that the work is worth paying for, but we're also doing a lot of stuff that's not going to be behind a paywall. So really just hoping to make something that, we wanted to see in the world, which is a reader-supported tech publication. I mean, we were inspired by sites like Defector and Hellgate in New York City. And I think not that there were a lot of strings at Vice. We did have a lot of freedom, but I think we just really want to talk about how technology impacts people and sort of the personalities behind technology that are changing different power structures, et cetera.
This is the team. This is the A team for investigative journalism in the tech space. And this is what I think we're all looking for: new financial models in new media, especially, and I include websites as new media, which I probably shouldn't, since we've been around for several decades now. Even podcasting is 20 years old, but it's hard to find a way. It's not the newspaper biz anymore. So I love this.
Maybe you could follow the Twitch model and just start some drama with other publications every single day, and then just make some clicks out of it.
Well, I was told by my colleagues to come on this show and beef with everyone. So
that's it. Yeah. They're smart.
So,
I do
have
a lot of problems with you, actually.
Already, you're fighting with Instagram. You couldn't pick a better first opponent. Instagram throttles 404 Media's investigation into drug ads on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, I've been getting ads for meth for months.
What?
Just clicking through my stories on Instagram.
All I get is ED medicine. You get meth?
I get meth. I get hacked credit cards. I get hacking services. I got a job ad for massage services that were paid in cash.
Hitman. Yeah.
That's the vibe, yeah. And they're really easy to find on Instagram. Like I've shown this to Instagram several times. All of the ads are going directly to Telegram, like Telegram chat groups, where it's one click from Instagram to, would you like to buy a pound of weed? Would you like to buy meth, shrooms?
What do the ads on Instagram say? They don't say that.
Some of them do, which I don't know if you have the article up, but
I do.
A lot of them just have wads of stacks of cash, like people in ski masks standing in front of an ATM. But as you'll see here, this is psilocybin. That's directly on Instagram.
Oh my God.
Is this because the ads are sold on Instagram like they are on Facebook and many, many other sites in an automated fashion? It's like a vending machine. There's no human.
I mean, they nominally have a review process, but something about the review process is broken.
I'm sure there's so many. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of ads a day. They just can't, right? I mean, it looks like, they must be selling mushrooms. Okay.
I don't know. They put such a kibosh on like political ads. It's incredible.
They do stop those, don't they? Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
They can really do that.
Do. No, I wanted to say, I was talking to a famous person that is a right-wing commentator this week. We were talking in back channel about how disturbed we were with some of the extremism. And this person was telling me about how they have nothing but in their Instagram feeds, like posts about like how to construct pipe bombs for like domestic terrorism and stuff like that, like constantly in their feed. So it's just absolutely amazing to me, the stuff we get zonked for, and the stuff that just makes it through the NLP filters.
The excuse given, actually, this comes from an interview subject from the Integrity Institute, is that the harm isn't on the platform. It's a link to Instagram, and so it's hard to police these. Although I'm looking at the video that you posted at 404media.co, and it looks like there's some harm here. Just off the top of my head, it looks like they're showing you how to, like, this is a codeine solution. Jesus. I mean,
yeah, and the thing is I'm not offended by this stuff. It's like I was purposefully reinforcing the algorithm. Once I started seeing them, I started clicking on them because I was like, wow, like, why is this on here? But like I said, in that follow-up, our article about this problem was caught right away because it used the word meth, it used the word drugs, and it was prevented from having read.
They stopped the article. They didn't stop the ads.
Right. And you have like sex workers on Instagram, you have marginalized people, you have all these sorts of people who have their platforms and their reach limited all the time for these, pretty inscrutable rules sometimes. And then you have Instagram taking money to inject ads for codeine. And I got a lot of ads for guns even. And they're taking money for this, and they're not doing a great job of stopping it. I mean, I don't want to direct your listeners to go see where to find this, but Meta has an ad library, and you can see thousands and thousands of these ads if you search for a Telegram link, like a Telegram link shortener. And I've shown this to Facebook time and time again, and they say, okay, well, we delete it when we find it. And I say, okay, well, I can find it over and over and over again, no problem.
Have you tried actually ordering it and seeing if it's actually that stuff? Because it seems to me there would be very little incentive.
It might be a scam.
Negative incentive.
Which is even worse. I'm not even going to get my shrooms.
Exactly. So some of it is definitely a scam. Like some of the stuff you can tell, like this is someone trying to part a naive person from their money. But there are other ones where there's a lot of videos of the product, and then there's photos of the receipt, and they're willing to FaceTime with you to show you that they're walking to the post office to mail you your drugs, stuff like that. And I've spent enough time in these groups to think that some of them are real, and by real I mean they're actually selling drugs. And then I also talked to an academic who sort of traced the online drug trade from the dark web to Telegram. So obviously there's still dark web markets where this stuff is getting sold, but a lot of the most popular sort of vendors on the dark web have moved to Telegram because then they're able to have sort of like a one-to-one relationship with their customers. And so I'm pretty sure that a lot of this stuff is quote unquote like real, legit, not a scam. But I did not buy any of it because that's illegal. And we're a new publication, so,
probably best not to go to jail in your first
I want to last more than a week. Yeah.
Do you even have a lawyer on staff, Jason?
We have a lawyer. Yeah, okay. We did.
How did you fund this? Did you go out and get VC or investors, or is this all self-funded?
This is all self-funded. Wow. I mean, you might think it makes us sound a little less serious, but we each put in $1,000. And I think that's one of the big reasons why we did this, is because the tools to actually set up a site like this are much more accessible now. We're using this product called Ghost, which is open source.
Love Ghost. Yeah,
it's really good.
It's a blogging platform. Yeah.
Really fast, lightweight site. And then, it's a subscription model. So from day one, we had revenue coming in. We obviously have savings so that we're able to do this. But we didn't take VC money because we didn't want to get on a hamster wheel where they want returns right away, that sort of thing. We want to sort of do this on our own terms and see if we can make it work.
Is the server behind you right there, or?
Yeah, it's that bicycle. So if I just
you have to keep pedaling. Keep pedaling. Yeah.
That's a filing cabinet. That's where I keep all my important files. Which actually, it's where my Nintendo Switch is. To be totally honest.
Oh, that's good. I should put mine in a filing cabinet. Then it would look like you're doing something.
Exactly.
It's got to make you feel like you're at such a disadvantage, though. I mean, not to go to Elon right away, but, you look at what he did with Twitter and, he gets it, and he and all his VC buddies tilt the algo towards.
When you say he gets it, by the way, I want to make it clear, you mean he bought it. Yeah. Not that he gets it.
Blows $44 billion on this and just tilts the algo to all this stuff that he and his right-wing buddies want to do, like this all-in.
You're still there, though. Sachs. You're still there, Brianna. You tweet all the time.
Shame. I'm filled with shame about it. But no, it's and you see them doing it, and they tilt the playbook towards what they want to talk about, and they're just destroying journalists.
Do you stay there because you feel like, and I know this is legit, people say this,
sure,
if I don't stay there, it's going to go completely bonkers. So we need to defend ourselves on this.
To a certain extent, to be really honest, all my favorite group chats are there. So that's the main reason.
No, that's true. Still, and that's part of the problem is if you guys don't leave, then there's a reason to go there.
I know. I'm a terrible person.
No, you're not. I'm not. I am not berating you.
You're judging a little, but it's fair.
I'm a little judgy,
I think.
But can I just say that my wife is still using it regularly, and we still use it as a company because we use we have to promote on all the platforms. Anybody with a company has to promote everywhere.
That's been the big thing for me is I had not been tweeting or really using social media much at all over the last few months, which was very nice for my mental health.
Yeah.
But then you launch something like this, like you go out on a limb and you launch something, and it's like, my audience is on Twitter. The audience that I have so far is on Twitter, and I've been working to build an audience on Threads and on Mastodon, etc. But really have gone into a posting mode that I have not, a sort of Twitter brain mode that I haven't been in for a few years because it is a kind of noxious place. But
Eric,
so far, so good. Everyone's been really nice.
You said to use your Blue Sky profile. You preferring Blue Sky looks just like Twitter, but it's of course, it's Jack's open Twitter.
Jack Dorsey, yeah,
Jack.
Yeah,
Dorsey's
I mean, I'm definitely still on Twitter. I definitely still use it a lot. I've seen that it still has some of that juice that it used to have, although certainly less of it. But I think that diversity in this marketplace is valuable. Also, another thing I'll point out is I was talking to somebody about the kind of misinformation problem on social media, and one of the things they said was if we had more of these platforms that were sort of more equal in terms of stature as opposed to just Twitter and Facebook and everybody else, there would be more incentive for companies like Instagram to clean up the platform, to get rid of misinformation, to get rid of drug markets, because they would actually be worried about losing market share to other sites. So I'm trying to be a bit more conscious about using these other platforms as well, not as anything against Elon personally, but just, I think there's value in having multiple healthy communities.
I think that's really smart, but I also have this theory that Elon, by sort of saying, I am basically not going to do content moderation. Like I'm not going to do it in the same way that Twitter used to do it. I feel like that almost gives Zuckerberg the permission to be much more lax on Facebook and much more lax on Instagram. And I don't have any like data to back that up, but it just feels to me like Facebook has gone through waves where it's taken content moderation super seriously. And over the last few months, it feels like it hasn't. And I feel like part of that reason might just be because Elon's barely doing it on Twitter. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? Leave Instagram? I mean, a lot of people do, but a lot of people are kind of used to just start seeing junk on the internet all the time on every platform they go to. And so maybe there's some like less incentive to have a very strong content moderation team.
So it's not just your feeling on this. Washington Post had a fantastic piece that came out just a couple of days ago by Sarah Ellison talking about how Elon basically set the way for not doing anything about disinformation on these platforms, and the rest of big tech is following the way, which is very much evidenced by your Instagram ads. So it's not just your feeling. This is an objective reality that's happening.
And, just to bring in the Washington, D.C. element, there's a big fight right now in the courts about how much the government can be talking to these companies about election disinformation, about COVID-19 disinformation. The White House was for a little while actually legally prevented from having certain conversations with the tech companies. That ruling has been paused, but it's going to give these companies cover to do less of this if there are groups taking them to court for even talking to the government about taking stuff down.
And I've been seeing...
I find this... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brianna. No,
I was just going to say, I find this really frustrating because do you really think Twitter or Facebook are in the best position to go out there and determine which accounts are ISIS propaganda or run for recruitment out there? Of course, it's our NatSec agencies, right? And I find no issue whatsoever with them going and compiling data and just handing it over to a Twitter or a Facebook saying, look, we have the resources to look into this stuff. This is our determination. Do with it what you will if you're serious about these problems, though. But this is what we think. This is what we are finding. I think that's utterly legitimate for a government to do. And I just, I think this practice is really bad news for our national security.
So I always love this. One way to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of this is to watch ads on TV. And I remember last year in the Super Bowl, there were a lot of ads about Jesus getting us. And I was really interested, who's paying for those ads? Maybe you've seen these ads lately.
I've served in the Army for 27 years. Today, I'm retired and living on a pension. Instead of lowering our costs and tackling inflation, Congress is going after American technology. This misguided agenda will threaten the technology we use every day, and it could cost public pension plans over $100 billion. Seniors like me will pay a heavy price. Tell Congress to leave our technology alone.
How many of these have you seen lately, and who do you think's paying for that? I know, but I'll see if you guys know. That's a Facebook ad.
Well, it's clearly the American Edge Project.
It's the American Edge Project. The people who bring you all the good stuff in life from Silicon Valley. They are lobbying really hard to keep Congress out of their pie, out of the trough. This is Sarah Ellison and Naomi Nix's article you were talking about. Following Elon Musk's lead, big tech is surrendering to disinformation. And I think you're right. I think it's partly because it's easier to do so, but also partly because the government kind of seems to be encouraging that they take a hands-off policy. That's coming, by the way, from the American right that says, stop censoring conservative voices.
Well, so much of the content moderation, like the reason these platforms do content moderation is because they're worried that advertisers don't want to be next to disinformation, and they don't want to be next to drugs, and they don't want to be next to sex.
But you know what? Cheech and Chong gummies do not mind being everywhere on Twitter. I cannot get away from the Cheech and Chong gummies. Apparently, they don't care. but most, you're right. Most advertisers want to be in a quality environment.
And but where's the quality environment now? And so I think that's like, since Elon isn't doing it, no one obviously has to. A lot of advertisers have pulled away, but they're not going to pull away from Facebook and Instagram because those are very high. They're very effective places to advertise.
I think this is, I can't say the word I really want to say, so I think it's horse duty. I think I would say, it's the idea that Facebook and Twitter and all these companies are not actually publishers. I find it fairly laughable, and I understand it's kind of easy to fall back to like a profit motive argument on this. It's bad for advertisers, it's bad for the bottom line. Fair enough, but I'm old enough to remember an age where I think politics was better because there was some editorial judgment placed with what we saw and what we were talking about. And it's not to say we didn't miss a lot of really important stories, or the biases that exist in those newsrooms didn't have really serious policy effects. Look at the AIDS crisis. This is a really good example of that just not being covered for a long time the way it needed to be. But I just don't. I think if you have a media environment where the best argument they have is it's about the profit motive and not about what makes this just our civic virtue. Forget Republican or Democrat, but just what makes this what is good for civil society. I just don't think we can operate that way. I
think you might be a little bit over optimistic, and maybe a little nostalgic. Perhaps. Maybe a little because I just finished just such a good book, Robert Caro's book about Robert Moses, the guy who paved New York City with parkways. And one of the reasons Moses could operate for 40 years as an unelected official with a massive budget in the face of political opposition is because the New York Times loved him and would not write a negative thing about not one. In fact, to his death, wouldn't. Even panned this book, called it venomous, because it criticized this guy. And so I think that we have, I agree with you. I always thought, I trusted Walter Cronkite, the New York Times, a paper of record and all that. But maybe it's not a perfect, unblemished discussion. My argument is not that it's perfect. I pointed out the AIDS crisis as an example where they got it really wrong. I'm saying that there was some editorial judgment. Aren't we better off having a lot? I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, but sure. Aren't we a little bit better off having everybody have a voice and trusting? This is something that seems to be lacking in all these conversations. Trusting people to judge what's good and what's not, what's good content and what's not, and to make an appropriate decision based on all the information instead of something editorially selected for them. I think it's a fantasy. That's a fantasy too. I think it's a fantasy because look, we've seen this. We see it every single day in the algo. Most people are going to believe stuff that it is what they already agree with, right? The stories that you most need to read sometimes in, like, say, Wall Street Journal. This is a paper I subscribe to. It has a point of view I generally don't agree with, but it's well researched. Actually, it is foundationally accurate. I just took it out of my RSS feed because I started to see. Of course, everybody knows the editorial section, the opinion stuff, that's garbage. But everybody always told me, oh, no, but they have good reporters. You could trustworthy reporters. You could trust the news. But I'm seeing more and more of a big anti-big tech slant from the Wall Street Journal, constant anti-Google, so forth. And I think that they are just as biased in the news division at this point. And that's I would need to see that. I think, I only saw it because I had the RSS feed, and it was article after article after article. I'm pretty sure I took it out of my RSS feed. But look at Joanna Stern, Christopher Mims. I agree. They've got good people. Sarah Needleman, one of the best reporters in the entire business, in my estimation. Somebody in the Discord is saying the social contract is broken, and maybe that's really part of it. And honestly, the reason this is important is we've got a presidential election coming up in just a little over a year. And We've got AI coming on strong, and disinformation machines are ramping up. And it's going to be pretty soon that you won't be able to trust a thing you read.
Yeah.
And maybe the best thing is to say, well, it's the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, but I'm even questioning stuff I'm reading in those papers.
Yeah. I think it's really hard, coming back to, I obviously support.
I think we need to read 404media.co.
I was going to say.
And we need to read The Messenger. And maybe this is the best hope, is these small independents that don't seem to have as much of an axe to grind. Maybe this is the future. And I love seeing people like you, Jason, going out and saying, we're going to start our own thing. It's going to be 4 of us, and it's going to be shoestring, but we're going to give you the good reporting you're used to without an axe to grind. I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about it. And then also, it's like the numbers can be scary. It's like we need thousands of people to subscribe to us in order to make ends meet and to have a life. But then you start thinking about how many people are out there, and you just need a tiny fraction of the people who read us to support us in order for that to work. And one of the things that I saw at Vice, which I'm not going to ramble about this too long, is that there's astronomical overhead in the news business right now. It's like Vice had an office that they just announced they're leaving in prime Williamsburg in Brooklyn. That office is millions and millions and millions of dollars, something like 40 or 50 offices all over the world, paying consultants all of the time to come in and, reassess what the business strategy should be, changing tactics all the time. And I think that when you have this astronomical overhead, it makes it really hard for the journalism. Not that we had this in mind the whole time, but as part of the bankruptcy proceedings, we sort of saw the financials, and Vice owed millions and millions and millions of dollars to a variety of companies. And it's impossible for the journalist to outwork that, I think. And if you start with something very small that doesn't need millions of dollars to succeed, you can still do really impactful work, and you can make it financially sustainable because you don't have this insane overhead. And I mentioned Ghost earlier, but one of the reasons we're able to do it is because it has Stripe built in, which is a payment processor. It's like we don't need to hire an IT team. Like Ghost is just rock solid. There's just all the barriers to entry to make a website. I mean, this. You started a podcast over 20 years ago. They don't exist anymore. And so there's a lot of benefits to being in a big newsroom or being at a big media company. But, me and my co-founders have done this for over 10 years. We know how to do the journalism. And now there are enough services and pieces of software and open source tools out there that we can do all of the logistics and back end business stuff pretty easily and pretty inexpensively. So
yeah. I think I would have 2 concerns about that. The first is look at someone I've done twit with a fair number of times, Paris Martinet, right? If there's not a pipeline for people to come out of college, become professional journalists, and everything is like these smaller blogs, maybe it's okay for a while, but I think in 5-10 years, I think there's going to be a real lack of institutional knowledge, that's going to really affect like the talent that's coming next. I think the other problem is, we've seen this. I really love cars, for instance. We had a bunch of people from Jalopnik and a bunch of the other car periodicals go and start a website called The Utopian, right? Great site. But what they have to do to get the money they need to continue is write the kind of silly stories people like me are going to pay for. They're not doing the nuts and bolts journalism that, really informs the car market or even performs a watchdog role. It's more like, look at this guy that, LS swapped this crazy engine into a Miata, right? Because I'm going to click that. So I think there's certainly a model for some journalists to survive of what you're talking about, but I think it's going to leave the country weaker overall, in my estimation.
And particularly because it's hard for small news organizations to have the funds to pay interns, right? I mean, there's a lot of discourse in the news business about the need to pay interns so that you can have a more diverse candidate pool, so that you can foster journalists from different backgrounds. That's difficult to do if you are paying your operations but don't have a lot left over. And so, legacy media organizations have a lot of money in the budget, and if they can put some of it toward paying interns to get them their foot in the door, that is one thing that, for better or worse, legacy organizations can generally find money if people at the top want to do it. Now, that's a separate question. But to be a CNN, to be a New York Times, means that if you decide that you want to pay your interns, that's no problem for you, right? If you're a smaller organization, no matter how great your journalism is, you could want to pay your interns the same as a senior reporter, but you just don't probably have the money for that in most cases. And so it means that there's fewer places for a young person to go when they're getting into this industry. I would, however, say to Leo's point about trusting certain news organizations and not trusting others, I think the new model for being a savvy news consumer is trusting specific reporters, particularly because there is so much churn in the industry, right? So if you say, I know this person and I trust them and I'll follow them wherever they go, then you know that this person is not suddenly going to become untrustworthy. No matter where they are, they're going to still do the journalism that you respect them for. And so that can be a shorthand for you to still get high quality journalism without having to figure out if this entire company has a slant that you agree or disagree with.
Excellent point. Yeah. In fact, that's kind of what you were doing, Brianna, because when I did Wall Street Journal and I don't trust them anymore, you mentioned 4 names of people you do trust, and I do trust them as well. And so I think that's exactly how we should do it, Eric. I think that's really smart. And unfortunately, until recently, big media did not want big bylines because that's expensive. So it's going to be up to us as individuals to find those names and find those voices. And sometimes it might not be the Washington Post or the New York Times. It might be a Substack or a ghost blog.
I do think Brianna's point about I think Brianna's point about sort of the inside jokes of a site like Utopian is a really good one, though, because a lot of the most popular Substacks are incredibly niche, and they're they're hyper specific. And if you're not interested in that topic, you're unlikely to subscribe to it, obviously. And I think that is a big concern. If you have all of these hyper specific media outlets writing to a couple thousand people, how does a story break through? You might see something every now and then, crop through to the mainstream and affect policy, et cetera. But you also then have people who are getting their news from, just a variety of Substacks about hyper niche things, and then aren't able to follow some of the bigger through lines that connect all of these niche topics.
Certainly there's no lack of media, right? There's no lack of things, of content to consume, places to go, people to read, sources of information. If somebody wants to know a good example, Jason, is this Instagram ad story. Has anybody picked it up yet, or is it just you?
I mean, we've been aggregated a handful of times.
Yeah. So if it's a story, if it's an important story, I think people are going to pick it up. And in a way, that's the market of ideas, a marketplace of ideas. If it's niche and nobody's interested, then the people who are most interested will know it, and the rest of us will just blithely go on our way without knowing it. I think these inside things is voice, and I think voice is really important. That's the other side of following a person. You also follow their voice, and you want to hear their voice and know their voice. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Eric.
No, that's fine. This is part of what made Twitter so valuable when it was in its heyday, is that if you are a one-person shop as a journalist and you've got your Substack and you break some news, in a pre-Twitter era, it's very unlikely that will ever make it to the editors at the New York Times. But if I have 5 followers and I tweet out this link and 2 of them retweet it,
there you go.
There's a good chance that will make its way up the chain of journalism through a social media website until somebody at the New York Times says, hey, we should dig into this too. And in a world where there isn't that critical mass on one site, I don't know that that's going to happen as frequently.
But Twitter's dying. Where do we do that? Yeah.
Well, that's an existential question, frankly, for some smaller news organizations.
It's a good argument, though, for why we need something like that. Not necessarily as the place you read those articles, but the place you keep your finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist. Like, what are people talking about? And I think that's absolutely how I use Twitter, and I bet most people who read Twitter, maybe don't post to Twitter, that's what it was most valuable for. If you heard somebody died, you'd say, you'd go right to Twitter. Now it's very fragmented.
One of the things we're really working on for this election cycle is the Democratic Party is looking at the sinking ratings for CNN and MSNBC. And traditionally, this has been where at least half of the money for a campaign has been spent. There'll be over $1 billion spent on this presidential election this, in 2024, probably more like 1.2, more 1.3, 1.4 billion. And at least half of that is going to go to television ads. The Democratic Party is looking at the ratings for cable news and for local news and is realizing, holy crap, people are not tuning into this anymore. How can we get our message out? And that's why they're finally investing in the project I'm doing, which is this streamer project, taking people like Destiny and Vosh and, Young Turks and Majority Report more seriously as news organizations that millions of people watch, that they need to go get their message out on. My friend Taylor Lorenz, she very famously she's been shouting this from the Hill for the last decade about how younger people do not read news. They do pay attention to influencers. And if you're interested in getting a story out there, you've got to be talking to influencers. And, the future.
Oh, God, I hate that word, influencers.
I know, but it's the reality.
I hope she's wrong on that one.
And it's objectively right, and studies have proven it. So think about where politics is going as a whole.
But remember 2016,
sure,
where Donald Trump and Brad Parscale particularly won an election, arguably, in 2016, didn't win the popular vote, but won the election through a strategy on Facebook of $100 ad buys.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting point of view. And that wasn't influencers, but that was highly targeted small ad buys that were very, very effective. I think
effective through stolen information.
Well, I don't think it turns out that Cambridge Analytica thing was maybe a little overblown. They didn't have to steal information. All they had to do was say, Facebook, I want high school educated middle-aged guys living in Appalachia, and I'm going to show them this ad, and it's going to it's targeted, highly targeted. It's going to do very well with them. No one else is going to see. Nobody in the city is going to see that ad. Those people are going to get a different ad. That really worked. So I think that's very old school. The idea of we're going to spend $1 billion on CBS, or in the case of statewide campaigns on our local radio station. By the way, I used to work in radio. That every 2 years, big windfall with political ads, but that's going to go away. I don't think radio's getting those ads anymore because that's not how you reach people anymore. Because they aren't mass.
They've lied about the metrics for so long.
Well, Jeff Jarvis says this: the whole mass media is a very modern invention. It's only 100 so years old, and we're going away from that. That whole idea of everybody's watching Walter Cronkite at night or Johnny Carson, that's long gone. It's a much more fragmented market, but so they're finding new ways to reach those people. I don't know if that Facebook strategy would work in 2024.
It wouldn't.
Yeah.
The salience of those ads is
right.
Is diminishing.
But there'll be a new way. There'll be a new way. I think. I think I celebrate the diversity of voices. I think that's a good thing, and it means
you may feel that way because you run a small media company.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think mass media is a good thing. I really don't. Look, we have 700,000 uniques a month. It's a tiny fraction of, it's bigger than a local newspaper, but it's it's bigger than most technology magazines, but it's a fraction of the traditional mainstream media. I'm very happy with that number. And by the way, advertisers have moved off of podcasting. They've moved on to much more programmatic stuff. So that's why we have a club. We have to do what you're doing, Jason. And actually the Messenger's doing it too. Reach out to our audience and get them to fund what we do. But I think that's a good thing. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. Why is that bad, Brianna? Why do we want mass media?
it's not that it's necessarily bad. It's that, Neil Stephenson wrote about this in The Diamond Age, where, the Diamond Age is a story about what happens after the snow crash world, and they're trying to figure out how to make society work again. And the Victorians, one of the lessons they take is it's not necessarily good for society for everybody to read a different newspaper every single day, because it's hard to find a consensus on what people believe. Everyone's living in their own reality. And it's hard to set a national group of priorities.
Yeah, we're kind of seeing that, aren't we? Yeah, right. Today. Yeah.
So I think it's good and it's bad. I think if you are, a LGBT person, I think it's good that media exists to get out the stories about your rights that you care about.
What if that mass consensus was really just a case of propaganda, being susceptible to propaganda, and that we all kind of bought into the same story because it was told so convincingly, drummed into our head by mainstream media that we believed it. Yep. That doesn't mean it's the best way to go. I agree. It's hard for a politician to know where to spend their ad dollars, but I don't care about that. That is not on my agenda. The only problem is this now puts the burden on the consumer, the reader, the listener, to find those voices they trust and to go out and look around instead of just saying, well, I'm going to go to channel 4. And
there's definitely a discoverability issue. I mean, the reason I'm doing this show, one, is because I want to talk to you, but I also
I know why you're here.
I want to talk to your audience, and it's discoverability. Eric brought this up earlier, but it's like Twitter was a spot where at least it's like people on the left, people on the right, people in the center were all on the same platform, just basically doing battle all day, every day. And it wasn't always that the best ideas won, but you could be certain that if you did something noteworthy, it would rise to the top of Twitter, as in it would become a conversation. It would get an audience. Now it's I think that the most number of followers anyone has on Blue Sky is 200K or something like that, wow. 2 or 300,000. And it's that's fine. Blue Sky is fine. Mastodon is fine. Threads is fine. But when people are splitting their time across all of these things, discoverability becomes an issue. And it becomes an issue for someone like me, where am I going to have my own persona on 15 different social media networks? And am I going to put myself, is it going to be unique on each of them? Am I going to put my heart and soul into growing an audience on Blue Sky and Mastodon and Twitter and on the website and TikTok and Instagram and a podcast? That's what I've been doing the last week. I've been posting to all of these things and it's been fun, but I don't know how long I can keep that up in an authentic way.
No.
You have to start automating some of those things.
It was
the same.
It was certainly a lot easier when it was just Twitter.
For sure.
I think we can agree, though, there isn't going to be a new Twitter. That's over, right?
No.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, discoverability is a huge problem in podcasting. We deal with this all the time. Twitter didn't help much because we're audio. So search doesn't work very well. You can tweet. Honestly, it's tough for podcasts. But does the cream not rise, or is that a silly Pollyanna-ish?
Let's look at something I care about a lot when I ran for office: cybersecurity. Right, I used both of y'all's reporting all the time when I was out there talking to people or trying to fundraise or trying to raise issues with people.
You're talking about Eric and Jason. I wasn't in that group. Yeah. Okay.
100%. And
did you ever listen to that Leo Laporte podcast? What?
Well, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you. my point is, this is a segment of, it's very, very important for national security, right? Obviously. And it's already so hard for those stories to break through and get people to take them seriously. I can think of very few NatSec issues that people care about less than cybersecurity debate, right? So I don't think it helps the situation when it's more fragmented, when you've got the best reporters that are out there working for smaller publications and they're just praying that the New York Times is going to cover something and then cable news will cover it and there'll be some angle enough that Twitter and Facebook and Blue Sky and Mastodon, all these other things will somehow grab that story and get people to understand it. Like, let's just be honest here. The thing that Twitter and the Twitter-like products are good at is snarking on people. It's good at making you the worst version of yourself, just a flaming anger all day long.
Yeah, there would have been no Gamergate without Twitter. I mean, we talk about the good 100%. Things, but there would nobody would have. That wouldn't have gotten any momentum at all.
It's turning all of us into the worst versions of ourselves. And I really agree with the fear that we just cannot manage a presence on this many sites at once. I'll cop to it. I just copy the same good tweets I do on Twitter and post them over to Mastodon and Blue Sky where the conversation's a lot friendlier. I just don't have the bandwidth.
Honestly, the real problem is Mastodon especially is not a promotional place. It is a place where you have conversations. And if you're trying to promote a product, Mastodon's not the place to do it. If you want to have a conversation with people, it's a great place to do it. And I kind of prefer that for my social network. But, yeah, our marketing department may not be happy on Mastodon. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're not. I think in the long run, it's a net positive because and maybe this is very old-fashioned, as I said, Pollyanna-ish, but I just think the more voices, the better. Yeah, it makes a lot more noise, but at least everybody has a voice. And it's not somebody in an office building in Midtown Manhattan making a decision for all of us about what's important.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a very good way to do it either.
I think you need a balance of the ability for anybody to get into the conversation and the ability of people who have demonstrated critical thinking skills to have some informal moderating role in that conversation, right? So you need some ability for people who have degrees in very complex subjects to be able to not just say, well, that's wrong, but then to get that debunking picked up and taken seriously and amplified, as opposed to the guy who doesn't have the degree and is just lying, saying, this is totally true, just trust me, and then that gets amplified. A system that can't distinguish between those two types of people, even if it's in an informal way. I'm not saying that there should be some Twitter-run service of you get to be trusted, you don't. But informally, there's got to be some way for expertise to play a role in circulation.
Well, we used to value degrees and things, but we live in a world now, a media environment now, where expertise is denigrated. I hear people talking about medical elites. Oh yeah, you mean somebody went to med school and studied this stuff? Those medical elites, yeah, I'm not going to listen to them. But that's the world we live in now, is people don't like expertise. They're actively avoiding expertise. So I think there's good signals. If you were looking for expertise, there's signals. You can, for what it's worth, you can trust academic credentials, publishing in peer-reviewed magazines, things like that. Experience. Somebody's been, doing something for 23 years, probably knows a little bit about it. But we've got a much bigger problem where people eschew expertise and say, I just saw a poll actually on this, where the majority of people would prefer somebody who doesn't have any expertise. They prefer, quote, common sense to expertise by a large margin. Let me see if I can find that. That's the world we live in now, and that's part of the reason we have a problem.
I think that ties really well into the Elon Musk piece that came out in the New Yorker this week.
Let's talk about it. Let's take a break, and then we will absolutely talk about it. I really wish I could find this poll where people, it's like 57% said, no, I'd rather trust common sense than experts.
Oh my goodness.
Do your own research, right?
Yeah, do your own research. That's the code for doing your own research. All right, let's take a little break, and then we'll talk about this, because we're also, I don't want to make this the dystopian podcast, But we're also in a world where if you've got billions of dollars, you might have some advantages. You might even be able to decide who wins a war. But actually, that's always been that way, hasn't it? Look at William Randolph Hearst, egging us onto the Spanish-American War with yellow journalism. But before we do that, let's talk about our sponsor, because they're nice people and they shouldn't have to listen to this. Our show is brought to you today. By the way, great. I am so happy to have this panel. Brianna Wu from Rebellion Pack, Jason Keebler. I'm sorry, I said it. Kebler.
Any and all of the above.
It's OE is Kebler, editor-in-chief at 404 Media. Brand new. I mean, literally less than a week old, right?
Yeah, 5 days old.
5 days old. It's a newborn baby. 404media.co. And from another relatively new publication started in May, The Messenger, senior cybersecurity reporter Eric Geller. Great to have all three of you. This is a perfect group to talk about this. This episode of This Week in Tech is brought to you by Collide. We're talking a lot about authentication, logging in, and a lot of people use Okta as a way of single sign-on or two-factor authentication. But there's one more step, one little extra step you might want to add to your Okta authentication, and that's Collide. Collide is a device trust solution. Listen to this, device trust solution for companies with Okta. Collide ensures if a device isn't trusted and secure, it can't log into your cloud apps. If you work in security or IT and your company's using Okta, this is a message for you. If there is one thing in common with all the breaches and all the hacks we hear about lately, it's the employees. Now, I don't want to diss employees, but honestly, that's the attack surface these days. Sometimes an employee's device gets hacked because of unpatched software. Look at LastPass. One of their devs, one of their system administrators, had an unpatched version of Plex running on his network. That was all it took for the hacker to get into his computer and then get into LastPass's network. Sometimes an employee leaves sensitive data in an unsecured place, their public key and their private key in the download folder. Happens all the time. And of course, all the time, spear phishing. Hackers break in using credentials they phish from an employee. The problem, though, I don't want to blame the employees. It's not the end users. It's the solutions you're using to prevent those breaches. It doesn't have to be that way. You're using Okta to authenticate your employee. Add Collide to authenticate the device, the hardware. Imagine a world where only secure devices can access your cloud apps. Phish credentials are useless to hackers. You can manage every OS, including Linux, Mac, Windows, all from a single dashboard. And one of the things I've always loved about Collide, it enlists your employees as part of your security team. They fix their own device security issues. They learn how, they learn why, they become part of the team, and it doesn't create more work for your IT team. Well, this is not a world you have to imagine. This is a world that exists when you start using Collide. Kolide. Visit collide.com/twit. Book an on-demand demo today. Look at the demo, see how it works. Kolide, collide.com/twit. For companies that use Okta, you got to have Collide. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. You support us too, by the way, when you use that address, so please do. Collide.com/twit. Ronan Farrow, whose last target was Harvey Weinstein. Ronan's pieces in The New Yorker really made the Me Too movement take off. He has re-aimed his cannon. Now he's talking about Elon Musk. The story, Elon Musk's shadow rule, how the U.S. government came to rely on the tech billionaire and now is struggling to rein him in. Farrow points out in the article that it's, historically, John D. Rockefeller Jr., supported the League of Nations. There's been a long history of billionaires getting involved. I mentioned William Randolph Hearst using his newspapers to foment the Spanish-American War. During World War I, J.P. Morgan lent vast sums to the Allied powers. So this is not new, but it's a little scary. He says Musk took advantage of a vacuum created by government pulling out of, for instance, the space race.
Yep.
And Musk moving in and creating dominance. SpaceX has launched more satellites than every other country, every other commercial entity combined, by a factor of 10 times more satellites than China. They just put 4 more people up on the space station. We used to use Russia to supply the space station. Now we're using SpaceX. And the problem is that the Ukraine army also uses SpaceX for their frontline battle communications. It costs, according to Ronan Farrow, $400 million a year. And initially, I remember Elon says, I'll give it to you for free. And then Elon calls the Defense Department and says, hey, this is killing me here. You got to pay up. The threat being that he would disconnect frontline forces from their comms and effectively end the war. And so the Department of Defense is handling Elon with kid gloves.
Well, I think the issue that this raises is it's far more disturbing than just not having an invoice paid. Elon, obviously during the Obama administration, Russia illegally annexed Crimea, right, which is part of Ukraine. And now the current war going on is a continuation of that, where Vladimir Putin is trying to take over the rest of Ukraine, right? So what happens is those telecommunications are geofenced. So as soon as they cross that border, Ukrainians cross the border into their own territory. Elon Musk has decided they are not going to have frontline communication, meaning battlefield commanders cannot order strikes or pass intelligence back and forth. We've had network-centric warfare for the last 20 years, which really puts that kind of total intelligence environment, like our warfare is based around that. Where are the targets? Where do we send cruise missiles? Where do we attack? Where do we send drones to? And Elon Musk is really in this position because we have chosen to not basically defund NASA and to not play a role in putting this telecommunications equipment into space ourselves, where this billionaire gets to decide who wins and loses this war.
He literally could throw the war to Russia.
That's
just by
exactly
turning
correct.
off SpaceX for Ukrainian forces.
That's exactly correct. In ways even more troubling, and Farah points this out in the piece, is there are very valid concerns about Musk's relationship with Putin. I personally found his talking points on the Crimea really disturbing because they are word for word repeating Russian propaganda straight from the Kremlin.
In this article, they quote Musk talking to a Defense Department official. I had this great conversation with Putin, says Musk.
Yeah.
Apparently, Musk says I don't know if it's true because Musk is a blowhard, but apparently talks to Putin every week.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a good thing.
There's a throughput through all of this where America's government decides to underinvest in a certain industry, right? Whether it's electric cars or telecommunications equipment or space infrastructure, all of these things. Musk moves into the space and creates a company that kind of creates a near monopoly, right? This is a pattern. This is exactly why we've had to move to, electric car companies using the Tesla standard. And
that's exactly right.
Up in recent
that's
months.
exactly right. Elon has built all the infrastructure nationwide for charging. Audi has tried with Electrify America and failed miserably.
Yes.
So what happens? Car companies say, we're going to start using the next the Tesla standard because that's the only charging network out there.
Right. So it's bad enough when a billionaire can decide our electric, fine, that's free market or some version of the free market. Well, it's this whole nother discussion. But if you're talking about national security concerns, I've got a real big problem with Elon Musk being the veto over if Ukraine can take back their own country.
And remember, Musk has other incentives besides the good welfare of the Ukrainian people or of America. For instance, half of all Teslas are made in China. In Shanghai. Farrow says when Musk went to China, he was treated like a visiting celebrity with flattery and feasts.
Yeah.
He met with senior officials, including China's foreign minister. pose for photos, the awkwardly smiling formal photos that are more typical of world leaders. Now, partly this is because of a vacuum created by American politics, believing in, for the free market as opposed to government investment. But partly it's because of Elon's, I guess you could say, business acumen moving into those arenas. I mean, you can't fault him for building a very, very successful business in the absence of government investment. But at this point,
there is good reason. Yeah, go ahead.
At this point, he's got us over a barrel, and his motives again may not just be what's best for America or what's best even for Ukraine. It's what's
this is why I have such a problem with when people say, "Oh, just ignore Elon." Like it doesn't matter what he does. You can't. He's critical infrastructure. I mean, this article shows it. He's been building. He is America's access to space, and he has internet that he can turn on and off on a whim. And it's not, I mean, there's a point in this article where it's not like you're dealing with Northrop Grumman or one of these massive companies that, have been working with the U.S. government for decades and decades and have probably more standard ways of sort of doing things. It's like, there's the one guy, there's Elon, you call him up and you kiss his feet and beg him to keep the internet on and hope he's having a good day, I guess. And that's a really scary
that's part of it
position to be in.
He's very mercurial. He seems to lie a lot. We don't really know what his motives are. It doesn't even seem to be making money. I mean, he threw $44 billion away pretty easily. Ronan Farrow does not have an answer in this article. It's just here's what it is, and it's easy to blame. I mean, I blame the FCC for letting SpaceX put 42,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. I mean, I think that in hindsight was a bad idea. I celebrated it at the time because I thought, oh, this is great. He's going to provide low cost internet to every corner of the globe. Well, not exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of reason. Just even getting into the capabilities of Starlink and their particular flavor of internet, which is a whole nother discussion. I have there's every single reason to be very suspicious of Elon Musk's loyalties and his judgment. I am not someone who is aggressive on drug policy, but Farrow points out a lot of
in 2018, the Times reported that members of the Tesla board had grown concerned about Musk's use of the prescription sleep aid Ambien, which can cause hallucinations. The Wall Street Journal reported earlier this year he uses ketamine, a common depression treatment, party drug. Elon has not admitted it, but I've talked to people who have done ketamine with Elon, and he doesn't have to admit it. It's a known fact. He said, from what I've seen with friends, ketamine taken occasionally is better than SSRIs. May be true, but it also can cause a kind of erratic behavior. Farrow interviewed a leading ketamine researcher. Gosh darn it, another expert who said a little bit of ketamine has a similar effect to alcohol. It can cause disinhibition, where you do and say things you otherwise would not. Sounds familiar. At higher doses, it has another effect, which is disassociation. You feel it detached from your body and surroundings. You could feel grandiose and like you have special powers or special talents. People do impulsive things. They could do inadvisable things at work. The impact depends on the kind of work. For a librarian, there's less risk. If you're a evil genius billionaire, well, big problems. No, he actually said if you're an airline pilot, but still similar. I don't know. This is another example where there's no answer to this. It's just the world as we know it.
Well, I think there's a very clear answer. I mean, first of all, if you're talking about telecommunications infrastructure in space, I don't care if we save a few dollars with having SpaceX send up a rocket or not. If you're talking about national security, we need the capability to put that up ourselves. As far as oversight in who gets to put all kinds of satellites in an orbit, we need a better process for that. SpaceX should not have a total monopoly in putting that infrastructure into space. I think the Pentagon and our national security apparatus needs to have a piece of that pie itself. And the good news is we are investing in that infrastructure, but this is going to be a long-term infrastructure play to make sure that we're not so reliant on someone that's undermining our own national security interests.
Eric, and, there are ways for the government to kind of use regulatory tools, and I'm sorry for bringing up regulatory tools on a podcast.
I think we have to.
The infrastructure bill had a ton of money for things like electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And one of the things that the government said was, if you want this money, you have to promise that the charging infrastructure that you build will be interoperable so that I can bring any car and I can charge it. It's a Tesla charger. That's great. If I have a non-Tesla car, I still have to be able to charge there. And so Texas, I think it was recently, which is going to get the largest share of this particular pot of money, agreed basically to sort of capitulated almost to the White House and said, yes, give us the money. We agree that we will make these companies add interoperability into the charging infrastructure because we desperately want this money. We want to be a place where you can drive your Tesla or you can drive your other EV and plug it in at any stop along the road. So that's one way for the government to kind of use, again, the power of the purse to say, we are the titan in the room. We are the funding source behind everything. I thought it was interesting. We were talking earlier about how, Elon Musk built SpaceX and Tesla in a void of government investment. Well, government investment is the reason that those companies exist at their current stature. They are the primary customer for a lot of these things, in addition, of course, to early stage grant funding. So the government does still have some power. The question, of course, is whether the people in power want to use the power.
Right. Or throw their dollars towards a private industry. And I guess really that's the real issue, is there's been this ideological move towards privatization. And that's the real problem. Once it's private industry, you don't really control it. I guess you might if they need continued funding. It's interesting. Your interpretation of the Texas story varies a little bit from Reuters' interpretation. Reuters says exclusive Tesla wins as Texas requires state-backed charging stations to include its plug. So it's both. It's CCS and NACS. But I guess it was just going to be CCS, and then the Texas legislature said, we really ought to have Tesla's NACS connector as well. In effect, that made NACS the new national standard. And then Ford, GM, Rivian, many other car makers said, okay, we're going to make sure our future vehicles also are NACS. Which means, at least according to Sam Abul-Samad, our car guy, the end of CCS charging in the next 5 to 10 years. And Tesla, and by the way, the stock market also believed there was a win for Tesla because their stock went up that day 1.2%.
Oh my gosh.
It was a win. It was a big win. Yeah. All right. What else? Let's change the subject. How about this? More billionaires at work. For the longest time, since 2017, we're about an hour away, about 60 miles west of a county called Solano County. It's one of the 9 Bay Area counties, but it's primarily agriculture. It's beautiful rolling hills, kind of arid. There's one 2-lane freeway that leads there, nothing else. But for some reason, since 2017, there is one thing there, Travis Air Force Base. Since 2017, somebody's been buying up land all around Travis Air Force Base. And when I first became aware of this story, there was some concern that this might be a nation state like China surrounding Travis Air Force Base with their own property so they could surveil it or whatever. Turns out, no, it wasn't China. In fact, it was a company called Flannery Associates, spent $800 million to buy tens of thousands of acres. And who is Flannery Associates? It's Mike Moritz, VC funder, Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, Mark Andreessen, the guy who created Netscape, now, of course, has his own venture fund, Chris Dixon. It's the Collison brothers who started Stripe. they're buying up this deserted land to make a special city. Their plan, the investment is, in theory, to create a beautiful city in the North Bay area. Let me see if I can find the description here of this city, where people live beautifully. Thousands of residents, tens of thousands of residents with clean energy, public transportation, dense urban life in the middle of nowhere. I guess you could build a highway to it from San Francisco. I mean, there's certainly a housing crunch in San Francisco. Lorene Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, is also an investor. Nate Friedman, Daniel Gross, $800 million. Some of this land, at first they were buying it cheap, but then word got around with the farmers, hey, somebody's buying up the land, and they were spending as much as 10 to 20 times the normal value for this land. One problem, it's zoned for agricultural, not residential. And that could be a problem because it's not easy to change the zoning. So they're going to have to, they think their plan is to have a state initiative. You know, it's very easy in California to get something on the ballot. It just takes a few tens of thousands of signatures on a petition. So they want Solano County residents to say, yes, we want to build the city of the future here in Solano County.
I want to know the name. San Francisco 2. What are we calling it?
Oh, I bet there's some good, clever utopian name for it.
It's literally identical to like the Disney original plan for Epcot Center. It's just like all the Silicon Valley rich people are making it. I'm so torn on this, you know, because I cannot say I'm a huge fan of many of the people involved with this.
Yeah, but I want to live there, don't you?
Well, at the same time, if you're looking at the congenital like problems with housing in San Francisco and, you know, just generally in California, there is a tendency. I think that more aggressive building of, you know, houses and residential areas and all that thing is obviously the answer. I mean, one of the things I've learned is like the luxury housing of today is the bargain housing of tomorrow, right? They
want to build a walkable city. They don't want to just build a commuter, you know, development. They want to build the next Paris. Somebody in our chat room says it should be San Francisco 2 Electric Boogaloo. I think that's a good name. That's a good name for it.
I guess this is what Mark Andreessen meant when he said it's time to build. I guess it's time to build an entirely new city. I was really happy to see that this is taking place on land and not
seasteading.
Not a seasteading.
Seasteading,
yeah, exactly. It's it feels a little more.
Peter Thiel wanted to do the seasteading, but I think we've learned since that those abandoned oil rig platforms are not the best place to create a new country.
Yeah.
I don't know. If he made this, it wouldn't be Disney, right? I don't want to live in the Disney. You know, what is the Florida city? The Disney build. I don't welcome
Sunset. Not some. Yeah.
I don't want to live there, but I don't know if it's a Silicon Valley North kind of a. It might be kind of cool. I don't know if this is ever going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, I have to think that the zoning is not going to be much of an issue. These people have so much money. They have so much power. They have so much influence.
Celebration. That's the name of it. Celebration, Florida. No, they'll get that through. You're right, because all you have to, it's easy with the initiative process. And I
just want to know if the internet service will be provided by Starlink. I think that would be a really interesting opportunity to link these stories together.
I don't see Elon's name on the list, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. No, he might be a little cash strapped at the moment. We'll have to see.
He is not. Well, I guess he is, right? Because all of those hundreds of billions of dollars are in stock, in SpaceX and Tesla stock, so he can't just sell it. Don't feel like
that whole agreement that he wasn't going to sell more Tesla stock for a while. They were not very happy with that.
I don't feel like he's saving money for diapers or anything. I mean, he's got some. You know, by the way, he says he sold all his houses and he's living in like a double wide in Boca Chica, Texas. The same people who said, oh, yeah, we've been doing ketamine with him, say they did it as his giant mansion in L.A. So it may not be in his name, but he's still got a house or two.
Yes.
Very famously, he didn't have a house for a long time, which is something he talked about all the time, how he was crashing on his, fellow billionaires'
I don't know if I
couches
buy
and stuff
that.
like that. And it's,
I don't.
Yeah.
I think that was more because he didn't want people to know his assassination coordinates.
Fair enough.
Right?
I think it's a story he tells himself about how hard he works when he's really just sitting there screwing around on Twitter all day.
Taking ketamine and tweeting.
Yeah, that's what I think.
It's fine. I don't mind if you want to do that. That's fine. Just please don't cut off the satellites to Ukraine. That's all.
That's not good.
That's all I'm asking.
Oh my goodness.
That's all I'm asking.
I don't know. It's just I'm really torn on this one though, Leo. It's a good project. It's just the worst people involved with doing it. And it's gonna have all these libertarian overtones with it. So I don't know.
What do you I feel the same. It's like I saw this and I was like, oh, secret evil billionaire plan to buy up land and build a new city. And then I was like, oh, as far as evil billionaire plans go, it's not that bad. I mean, I'm just like, okay.
It's no Moonraker. It's
go for it.
It's not Dr. No. It's not.
This is more Quantum of Solace, right?
Yeah.
It's that level.
Yeah.
Buy up all the land. Yeah.
Bill Gates is the largest landowner in America, but that's because he buys farmland. He's investing in agriculture. I don't think this is.
My goodness.
I don't think this is agriculture.
It's so interesting, with climate change. I mean, there are real concerns about, California and the infrastructure that y'all have for, water, electricity, just all that stuff. So it does make me feel a little better that they are willing to invest in a whole city there 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now. That's encouraging.
This is what bothers me, actually. I've been thinking about it. There is in Silicon Valley this notion of we know how to do things. We can do it better. Just get out of our way.
Yeah.
Let us. And I think ultimately this is the foundation for get rid of government. Larry Page, remember he said this at one of his Google I.O. speeches is, this government keeps getting in our way. I just want an island where we can do what we want. That's this philosophy is we're technologists. We solve problems. We understand. We're engineers. We don't let politics mess with our heads. Just let us take over. Remember when COVID hit, Apple and Google said, we got this. And they created the software to notify you when you've been exposed, and everybody with an Android phone and an iPhone supposedly had this software, and if everybody used it, then you would always know if you were exposed. How did that work out? That was Silicon Valley's solution to the COVID crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. It definitely reeks of Silicon Valley solutionism and Silicon Valley let's not have a governmentism, when a lot of the solutions to homelessness, a lot of the solutions to housing crisis start and end at we need to tax more and use that money to reinvest in these communities. And I mean,
although remember Mark Andreessen, I think it was Mark Andreessen who said, oh, don't worry, because there's going to be so much surplus production when AI and technology take over that everybody will have a basic income and you can just enjoy life. That no one will ever have to work. I mean, he truly thought this was the future.
Yeah, I also think it could be. I mean, I'll give you a really good example. There's one of my very best friends who was a best friend man at my wedding. He's an engineer in Silicon Valley. With all the wildfires in California, he was near a bunch of them, breathed in a bunch of the smoke, and then had a stroke. Right, went through partial paralysis for quite a few years. God. So you think about, and Leo, I'm not trying to be down on your state. I love California. I enjoy going there. I do worry a lot about your future with climate change. I think that's a real fear.
It's not just us. Yeah. It's not just us. Look at Lahaina.
100%. Look at Washington.
Look at British Columbia. Look at Yellowknife. I mean, we are in a world of hurt, and it's going to hit everybody. And maybe Massachusetts will be spared, but that's okay because we're all moving there from our blighted environments. So
I don't think we'll be spared, but I think that you look at some of the issues with, say, water supply in California. I mean, it's a real concern.
That's a legitimate issue.
This
is an arid state acting like we're a tropical paradise.
100%. So, if you're thinking, I'm so torn between feeling optimistic about them doing this and then going, I really wonder how much Mark Andreessen has really like factors in like air quality, like for this plan for a city,
Well, this is the problem with a planned anything, right? You can plan all you want. You're going to miss something. Planned economies don't work. Planned ecosystems don't work. Nature has a way of thwarting us all. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to talk about Jason's going to explain to me what Apple's up to with this one. We'll be back in just a second, but first, a word from our sponsor. You probably see their name all over the studio. They sponsor the studio. They are ACI Learning, and I think when you see that, there it is, you see right there, you say, well, who the heck is ACI Learning? Well, you know the name IT Pro. For a decade, IT Pro has been bringing you great, entertaining, informative IT training. They've partnered with ACI Learning, and now it's just the best, a juggernaut in IT training. Bingeable, short-form content. Since the merger with ACI Learning, they now have 7,200 hours of absolutely fresh, brand new content to choose from. They add new episodes every day because those studios are running Monday through Friday all day. I think they have 7 studios, and they're down there in the Gainesville area, and they are just doing great content. And if you're looking to get into IT as an individual, or if you're an MSP or a company with an IT department, and this is really important, you want to keep that IT team up to snuff, you really need to know about ACI Learning. You'll never be alone with ACI Learning. Their personal account managers are with you every step of the way. They've got those great self-paced IT training videos, but they have also interactive practice labs where you can try. You could set up the Windows servers and the Windows clients. You don't even have to have Windows. You can do it in any HTML5 browser. You could do it on a Chromebook. It's great for MSPs who want to try setups before they actually install them. They also have fantastic practice tests. Practice tests are great because the best way to prepare for a certification exam is to take the exam many times. And then when you know I'm ready, you can use those practice exams and take them confidently. ACI Learning has practice exam questions from Microsoft, CompTIA, EC Council, PMI, pretty much all the certs. One user said, ACI Learning is an excellent resource, not just for theory, but labs incorporated with the subscription. It's fantastic. I highly recommend the resource, the top class instructors. You can see all these testimonials on the website, by the way. go.acilearning.com/twit. ACI Learning, the only official video training for CompTIA. They've got Microsoft IT training, Cisco, Linux, Apple, security, cloud. They are going to be in London at the end of next month, September 26th and 27th at the International Cybersecurity and Cloud Expo. Stop by, join ACI Learning to experience the latest innovations and cutting-edge technologies. Again, September 26th and 27th in London at the International Cybersecurity and Cloud Expo. Learn IT, pass your certs, get your dream job, or if you're ready to bring your group along, head over to our special link, fill out the form for your team. The discounts are fantastic. Twit listeners will get at least 20% off an IT Pro Enterprise solution and can reach up to 65% for volume discounts, depending on the number of seats you need. And, of course, we always have that for individuals, that 30% coupon, TWIT30, 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership. Learn more about ACI Learning's premium training options, the best training out there in audit, IT, cybersecurity readiness. Again, the website is go.acilearning.com/twit. And don't forget the TWIT30 coupon for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership. Go.acilearning.com/twit. Take advantage of this. Go.acilearning.com/twit. So I saw this headline, Jason, and I thought, I scratched my head. Apple, which has fought tooth and nails across the country against right to repair laws, is endorsing California's right to repair legislation, as you say, after spending millions fighting it. All right, is there a loophole in the law? What's going on?
So there's actually not a loophole in the law. And after I published this, everyone was like, okay, what's the angle here? What's the catch? Why is Apple doing this? And to know why Apple's doing this, you need to know a little bit about sort of the right to repair movement. This all sort of stems out of a Massachusetts law in 2012 for auto right to repair. That after that law happened, the auto industry was basically like, we're just going to comply with the Massachusetts law in the entire country.
Yeah. That's why
Brianna,
state laws can really make a difference.
See, Massachusetts is great.
California is
exactly.
great too, okay? I just want to say. Okay, go ahead.
So earlier this year, a law passed in New York that was really watered down. You could drive a truck through the loopholes.
Yeah,
in the
the
New York
industry
law.
got a lot of concessions in that in New York bill.
Yeah. But then a stronger law passed in Minnesota. And then
I like how you
California-
said, are you from Minnesota? Because you said it just like you're from in Minnesota, eh?
Minnesota. No,
Yeah?
I'm from
No?
Maryland.
Oh, well, it's
never even been.
You said it so perfectly.
And so this California law passed the California Senate, I think 37-0. It was
Wow.
unanimously passed the Senate. And Apple has been taking these sort of incremental steps over the last few years to provide repair parts and to essentially comply with most parts of the California law. And what I think is happening here is this is Apple saying, okay, this law feels inevitable. We already have to comply with the one in Minnesota. Let's back this one in our home state. We're not going to be able to fight this legislation in all of the dozens of states that are pushing these laws through, or at least advancing it, kind of like that quarter game at the arcade where all of the quarters are getting pushed toward the ledge. And it's like we're about to see this thing where all the quarters fall off, and you get 30 or 40 different laws in 30 or 40 different states.
Yeah.
And that would be a nightmare, not just for Apple, but for all electronics manufacturers, where they have to comply with different sets of laws in different states. And so what I think is happening here is this is Apple saying, this is the law. We're happy to we're quote unquote happy to comply with it. We've been dragged kicking and screaming to this point, but maybe if we endorse this law, the other states will say, okay, we'll try to pass the exact identical language in our state, and that's kind of where it will stop. That is my theory, at least.
I have a less cynical take on this, which is if you look at since Apple started to really get in the mess for their right to repair, like third-party repair infrastructure stuff. If you look, generally speaking, at the technology they've been putting into products like the iPhone with Touch ID or Secure Enclave and all of that, I think they could tell that this is where the industry was going, and they started to kind of bake into their parts cybersecurity, not 100% mitigation, but at least ways to make sure this is a valid part that you're putting in here. Can we really think through hardware-wise what would look like if you put something in the middle to detect this signal? They've kind of had enough time now to really think about their products and to kind of figure out how a third-party repair person being in this, how to make everything still more secure there. Right, because this is inevitable, as you said. Also, really important to remember, they still control the parts supply 100% top to bottom, no matter who repairs it, which is a huge operational control on this. So, I kind of this is a pattern you see over and over with Apple. They get a goal in mind, and they start moving their product line towards it, and then 5 years later, you're suddenly rushing towards it. So that's kind of my read on it.
There's also the EU. And more Apple is kind of being beat down by the EU. I think they've kind of acknowledged they're going to have to put Type-C connectors in their iPhones this year. And, I think that at this point, it's really encouraging that governments are actually having some influence on these big tech companies. And yeah, this is good for Apple. It's good for consumers. The way Apple does right to repair is ridiculous. You may remember Micah Sargent ordering the special kit that included thousands of dollars worth of equipment that comes in giant Pelican cases. They sent the kit, but they didn't send the part. He was going to put the battery into his iPhone. He waited. The part came the day after we had to send the kit back or get charged $1,500 for the kit. So as the kit is being sent back, the FedEx guy knocks on the door and says, "Here's your battery, sir." It didn't work out that well. And I really felt like at the time, this is very grudging compliance. That Apple's saying, all right, if you want to repair it, see what you're going to need. But I'm glad.
Well, Brianna brings up a really good point about parts pairing and about sort of the cybersecurity aspect of this, because that is something that people have pointed out since this news has come out earlier this week. There's still a lot of parts pairing issues, software issues. Like Apple still has a huge amount of control over that. And so this is Apple giving a concession, but they still have a huge level of control. And so they eventually decided, this is not going to impact us that much. And then the other thing I'll mention is a lot of the repairs that are happening now, like the sort of leading edge of repair is board level repair, where you're doing micro soldering, like,
Apple's not doing that. Like, they're charging you $1,500 for a new motherboard.
Exactly. And so this is not something that Apple is going to be offering through this. Like, they're not going to be offering micro soldering guides or anything like that.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say the word motherboard in your presence. I apologize. I started and I stopped.
We call them logic boards around here.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, I should mention that the new publication 404 Media at 404media.co, and Jason Köbler is here. He is the EIC editor-in-chief, one of the four who left Motherboard to start 404 Media, and I'm really liking it. In fact, so much so that I just subscribed. So thank you for doing that. It's I really want to support what you're doing. It's a scary and hard thing to do, and I really want to support it. You got a great, by the way, another great article. Elon decided, I'm going to stream full self-driving. About 20 minutes in to the stream, as he's driving around, the car tried to go through a red light.
Oh my God. It tried to go straight as a bunch of people were turning left on a left turn arrow. It tried to go straight into oncoming traffic.
Oh, wow. And so Elon had to grab the wheel and save his life. Not the demo Elon was hoping for.
Wow.
But you got to give him credit for doing it. Even
the best part of that video is he literally yells intervention when he's doing it. Which I thought was pretty funny.
Intervention! I'm in your meeting! Okay. All right. Anybody who's ever used Tesla's full self-driving knows you really do want to keep your hand on the wheel and your eye on the road.
It looks so stressful. I mean, Leo, you've done this, right? Like, I see the videos of it, and it's just...
I've never done it on city streets, and I wouldn't. And that's really where you get in trouble.
Like, I get stressed enough just using cruise control and barely use that. I mean, with this, so it just... Like,
where does...
It would be so much
you
easier.
said 20 minutes in? Is there a time code? I'd love to hear it scream.
I think it's 2050, I believe.
Okay,
or it's either 2050 or 1950.
Because the stream is still on X. By the way, I am going to call it X. I think it should be called X. It should not be called Twitter. It should be called X. And he shouldn't be the chief twit. He should be the chief X. Enough said.
I unfortunately will continue dead naming Twitter. And,
you're dead naming it.
That's not.
It's not nice.
It's
not nice.
I just can't get on board with X.
Well, I know. So. And by the way, apparently X can't either, because the word tweet is all over the place still. So, okay.
Leo, it's at 1950 if you want it.
Oh, good. Let me see if we can. I have to jump ahead. Here's 1945. Listen, turn up the sound.
Slow, because we're driving around in basically rush hour. Intervention. Sorry. Okay. So that's our first intervention.
That's a red light. He was literally driving into the red
the
light.
car should be going straight.
Yeah, and those cars are not. Elon. Okay.
I like the music. The music is a very nice kind of calming, soothing backdrop for that. Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a spa. Driving around with Elon. Honestly, I don't feel safe in any of those, like Cruise or Waymo. We have them all over, the Bay Area, and nothing but problems with running into emergency vehicles, and Recently, the California Public Utilities Commission said crews could have run as many cars as you want, day and night, all the time, everywhere in the city. And immediately there were crashes, and the regulators had to, within a day or two, tell crews to reduce your fleet by 50%. So there was a crash Thursday night with a GM Cruise running into a fire truck. California DMV, as it does routinely, said, okay, we want you now to reduce your fleet until we investigate. There's no more than 50 vehicles during the day, 150 at night, until we complete our investigation, because we want to know why it ran into a fire truck. Was there anybody in it? I feel Cruz's response is, over 100 people lose their lives every day on American roadways, and countless are badly injured. We believe it's clear Cruz positively impacts overall road safety. That's a crash here, a crash there.
I don't know. I feel like one of the things I think that would really benefit the autonomous driving market would be regulatory clarity. I have a really good friend of mine that used to run a venture capital firm for this here in Massachusetts, and just went to China because he came to the conclusion if anyone is going to solve this, it's going to be the Chinese, because there is greater regulatory clarity in what the roads look like and what the process is to be indemnified if there's a crash, what the expectations are. And I think that too often, like even on this show, sometimes when we talk about regulation, it's always seen as a bad thing. I think it can actually go the opposite way, where if a tech company can really understand a path forward to develop a product where they're not going to be sued out of existence, that can really be a positive, right? So I think Tesla's trying to do something very, very difficult. I think they're doing it with fundamentally flawed hardware. But I also think the lack of clarity in what the path is to not get your pantsuit off, I think that's a really big hurdle.
Eric Geller, writing in The Messenger, themessenger.com. You could afford the M. Actually, I guess Finkelstein could afford the M. A young congressman sounding alarms about election security. This guy's a freshman member of Congress, Chris DeLuzio from Pennsylvania's 17th District. We often complain, and I know, Brianna, you ran on the premise that our members of Congress don't have a clue about technology.
That's true.
There are a few. Ron Wyden is one, and I guess Chris DeLuzio he was the policy director at the University of Pittsburgh's Institute for Cyber Law, Policy and Security. And while there, helped a local commission craft a report that led to, according to Eric, a complete overhaul of voting machines in the area, which is great. He also worked at the NYU's Brennan Center for Justice. Tell us about Chris DeLuzio. We should celebrate when we get some members of Congress who know what they're talking about.
Well, when I cover cybersecurity, and it's such a technical topic, and it can be so dense, and particularly covering it with a focus on policy, you have to make it about the real world impact on regular people. You have to make it something that people can understand without a degree or a CompTIA certification. And I try to make it as much as possible about the people who are involved, particularly, we hear a lot about sort of Washington as this monolith,
Right.
Washington is messing this up or whatever.
Right.
When it comes to tech and cyber, for the most part, these folks really don't have personal experience with this stuff. They're doing what their staffers are telling them, or perhaps they're doing what the lobbyists are telling them. So I try to highlight when folks actually come in with an understanding of this stuff, or in the case of Senator Wyden, they develop an experience with it. Chris DeLuzio is a really interesting person because he's a freshman, so this is his first term in Congress, but he has a lot of experience in a policy context thinking about why it matters that there are only 4 or 5 companies that make the vast majority of American voting machines, and why there are no federal rules that require them to have any kind of security precautions on these voting machines. This is really all done at the state level, and a state can choose not to require any of this stuff. And it basically comes down to who has the strongest requirements, who has the weakest, not necessarily the way that we would want to set up the system if we started from scratch. He has experience with this. He's studied this. He's looked at this. He's also worked on issues like disinformation and how we can try to get the companies to do things differently. We were talking about this earlier. And what he was saying is basically, he worked with state and local election officials day in and day out as they tried to understand how safe their voting machines were. And what he saw, and this should not surprise folks, is for the most part, these people had no idea how to ask the right questions of these voting machine companies. Do you use two-factor authentication for the administrator portal to get into the unofficial election result database where you post the results on election night? It's not the official results, but if somebody can hack that, they can cause a panic, and potentially in this day and age, that can lead to real world harm, as we've seen riots break out over misinformation on social media. So this is incredibly important. It's all done at the state and local level. The federal government has basically abandoned any sort of responsibility to regulate this. There are agencies that will give advice to the companies about what you should do, but they're not requiring it. They're pushing it to these local election clerks who don't know how to do this stuff. And he actually wrote basically a how-to guide. What questions should you be asking when you're going out there to buy new voting machines? What should you be looking for? And he was talking about how it's time for Washington to step up. It's time for Congress to pass legislation that sort of sets uniform standards so that you don't have to worry whether you live in Massachusetts or California or Idaho. You don't have to worry, is your voting machine producing a paper record so you actually have durable proof of how that vote was cast? You don't have to worry about all kinds of security issues. Right now, you have to kind of figure it out for yourself, look up what kind of equipment you're using and what standards it's meeting. So I think he's an interesting example of somebody who has this prior experience and is coming into this place that is not known for being up on the latest tech and cyber policy news. And he's trying to change that along with, a handful of other folks. So he's someone to watch.
He's a freshman Congress critter. So it's hard, I'm sure, to be heard. Are people paying attention in Congress?
Well, fortunately for, if you like what he's doing, he sits on the House Armed Services Committee, which writes the policy bill for the Pentagon. And, you would not necessarily guess this, or maybe you would if you follow politics, but a lot of stuff that is not strictly related to the military gets stuffed into this bill. So this committee is very important. Yes. A lot of cybersecurity stuff has been stuffed into the defense bill year over year. Yeah. And so he has the ability to kind of work that angle and get folks paying attention within this committee.
Good. Yeah. He's also trying to slow down the automatic approval, approval of Section 702 of FISA, which would be a good thing as well. That comes up at the end of the year. Go ahead.
He's very interesting because the administration, the Biden administration, is really pushing for that law to be reapproved without major changes. And he comes in this interview with me and basically says, I'm not quite convinced by the argument that the government is making, which is basically the short version is, if we don't renew this law without changes, we're going to lose a really important source of information about cyber attacks in this country. We learn a lot about what the other countries are doing to us in cyberspace by using this power to spy on them. And he basically said, I'm not convinced that this is such a critical tool. So it's an interesting kind of tension between a new Democratic member of Congress and the Democratic president.
In his in this piece, you say he says, we were not thinking about privacy when 702 was created 15 years ago alongside security in the way that we do now. And I think it's appropriate to readdress it and say, how can we make 702 better? If we want to reaffirm it, how do we make it better? I think it's appropriate. Brianna, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's really interesting in this country. Look, I think no one that looks at election security would claim that we invest the kind of resources into this that we need. At the same time, the fact that, all 50 states and then even, sub-counties within those states all have their own election systems and processes. In some ways, it's so distributed. It does
part of the strength
give faith in it does. Yeah. I mean, and you can look at individual circuit clerks' offices, right? And you'll go down there and you'll find Windows ME running, and the infrastructure has not been updated in many years. That's something we should very clearly appropriate more federal dollars for. But I think so. I think there are ways to take the strength of states running the elections in a way that makes sense to them, to take that strength and also have some federal guidelines for what kind of technology you can use. I think if there's an argument against public code auditing for voting machines, I have never seen it. I think there's no excuse for this to be a black box. I think, obviously, cybersecurity people should be able to go look at that code and give you confidence in the results. And the issues you're raising, like two-factor authentication for administrator functions, I think that's something we need a mandate for. So I think there's a way to keep the strengths here, but also have a little bit more federal oversight in it in a way that will give the public more confidence in the outcome.
I mean, it's just such an interesting space because a lot of other aspects of technology, PCs and even cars now, they've kind of, the companies have made peace with the idea that there are going to be people tinkering and meddling and trying to find problems. And especially the computer makers decades ago were very, very against the idea of creating programs to let hackers look at the code, look at the technology, tell them if there's a problem, and potentially get a reward for alerting them to a critical flaw. The voting industry is kind of the last bastion of resistance to this idea. And so it's very interesting to watch kind of the resistance from these companies. And they've been opening up a little bit under sustained pressure, including from the government. But a lot of them still don't really feel comfortable letting these hackers, these unvetted hackers, come in and look at this equipment. And for a long time, what they have been able to successfully say is, we're different. We are the architecture of democracy. You cannot let random people look at this code. Now, the response, of course, from the security professionals is they're already doing that. You can buy voting machines on eBay and open them up and see what's in them.
Yeah, they did it at DEF CON last year with the voting machine village.
They did it. I was just there a couple of weeks ago watching some of the machines that they were pulling apart. I mean, this stuff is happening already.
Yeah. Although Chris Krebs did say that the 2020 election was the most secure election in U.S. history. He was at the time the director of FISA. He got fired for it. But I mean, I think we've made progress, have we not?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, a lot of the state and local government agencies that do this work didn't know that there was any federal support available for them in 2016. And after DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, said, we're going to call elections critical infrastructure, which opens up a new role for us to help them, you started to see local clerks get to know, for example, the cybersecurity agency, CISA, which you just mentioned. They started to form partnerships with FBI cyber experts. You also saw nonprofit groups start to come in, provide money, provide expertise. We have absolutely progressed significantly since 2016. Part of that, of course, was the tech companies for a while felt pressure to do more to fight misinformation and to root out hackers using the platform. So we'll see if that continues to degrade. But absolutely, in a lot of other areas, sometimes it's just as simple as knowing who to call if you see something suspicious on your network. You would be stunned. Folks watching this show would probably be stunned how much that is the problem. You get into a crisis, you've been hacked, you don't know who to call at the federal or state level to get help. That has been dramatically reduced as a problem across the country. That is much less of a problem. Those relationships exist today. So we are definitely better off than we used to be.
You also did a great article and interview with a representative from South Carolina, Nancy Mace, who has introduced legislation that would require firms with federal contracts of $250,000 or more to create so-called vulnerability disclosure programs and encouraging white hat hackers to probe for bugs in public-facing computer systems. Good for her. That's great. What's the status of that?
So it's just been introduced. One of the things I think is interesting, it is a Republican Congresswoman who's pushing for regulation of federal contractors, which is not something you see every day. But it goes back to this idea that the government relies on private companies for so much more than we used to. We outsource IT, we outsource human resources from federal agencies to these private companies. And folks who watch this show or listen to this show might know the name SolarWinds. This was a company that provided IT software to federal agencies, Fortune 500 companies. They were hacked, and that opened a door to their customers. So what this is trying to do, it's not going to solve the problem in one fell swoop, but it is going to put more eyes on this code so that you don't have what are called supply chain attacks, getting into the ultimate target by getting into an intermediary target first. If you can cut down the number of attacks, you can cut down the ability of hackers to jump from one victim to another. And what this is doing is saying federal contractors are obviously a huge target, because if you can get into them, you can get into the federal government. So this is trying to deal with that.
By the way, it is an interesting split. I mean, it's not completely left or right. A lot of the people fighting against the renewal of Section 702 of the FISA Act are in Republicans, in fact, like Josh, what's his name?
Josh Hawley.
Yeah, Hawley. I try
Oh
to blank his name out constantly. But there is opposition on both sides of the aisle on 702, which is great. I mean, that's.
I mean, this is, I know this is idealistic of me. I really think good tech policy is not a right versus left issue. It's not. I've talked to so many smart Republican engineers that I hand to God, I have more in common with them on policy than the most left-leaning progressive that just doesn't follow this stuff. It's
that's the key is knowledge, whether 100%. You're left or right, but is the knowledge.
If you understand this stuff, you understand that it's difficult to balance platforms and free speech. It's not all or nothing. It is a gradient, and you've got to approach this thing. And cybersecurity is the exact same way. It's not like just like a completely locked down system or complete free for all, right? Like there's give and take here. Like good policy is about understanding all these perspectives and coming to something that addresses the best needs. So I completely reject this framing that it's left versus right.
Well, look at Matt Gaetz.
I think you're exactly right.
Matt Gaetz voted to reauthorize 702 back in 2018. This year, he says, you couldn't waterboard me into voting to reauthorize 702. These 702 authorities were abused against people in Washington on January 6th. Oh, okay. And they were abused against people who were affiliated with the BLM movement. Oh, okay. I'm equally aggrieved by both those things. Even Jim Jordan is questioning 702. So that's good. I think that's a good thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to say, Eric, I'm glad you're doing these articles because you mentioned Ron Wyden earlier, and I think it is important that people in D.C. understand the issues that they're talking about. And for so long, it was like, oh, you want to talk about privacy? Go talk to Ron Wyden. And he continues to do really excellent work. But the fact that there's a new crop of lawmakers who understand this stuff and who are talking about it in an intelligent way is really heartening to see, because you do so much of the last few years has just been screaming about Facebook censorship or like these sorts of things, but without a lot of substance behind it. I mean, the TikTok hearings were horrifying just in terms of the level of understanding among the folks running them. And so I don't know. I'm just happy you're doing this work, because I'm really glad to see that there are some people who are taking it seriously and who are actually trying to understand the issues.
And part of it is just communication, right? It's not the easiest subject to explain. I mean, that's why I like doing it, is because finding new ways to make this relevant to regular people is interesting, and it challenges me to explain it in a more interesting way. So for Congress, for members of Congress to grab this and make this an issue that they care about, that says a lot, because it's not the sexiest issue. You're not talking about healthcare or even education or even simple military issues where you can understand a tank rolling across the battlefield. This is just not as tactile. And so when people take this on, I think it's worth spotlighting that we have folks who are trying to communicate about this to their folks back in their district.
I don't know if I agree with you on that, just in the sense with my current job is working a lot with younger people, or, canvassing, like we're directly working with some of the biggest Twitch streamers to basically get their audiences activated for this election. And I have to tell you, when it comes to like social media policy or open expression policies, or even cybersecurity, they are exponentially more keyed in than I think the average voter my age would be. So I do think there's a growing electorate that understands that technology is our open square, right?
Yeah,
this is where we talk about things today.
Absolutely. It definitely skews by age. And I think what you're seeing now is you have to message to those young folks who are already kind of tech savvy and naturals at this. But if you want to get people to support you on, your stance on a cybersecurity issue, you frankly have to get them to understand it in people in their 50s, people in their 60s, people who have never used social media. That is still the most politically influential slice of the United States electorate. And it's changing. But for now, you do still have to communicate to those folks. And the one thing that does hit people, no matter what their age, is ransomware. So you constantly see these ransomware attacks on schools, on hospitals. people can't get their elective surgeries done because the unit is shut down because their computers don't work, right? I mean, think about the NotPetya malware attack. You know, the shipping around the world was paralyzed because the computers at these ports could not bring in cargo containers. Shipping was paralyzed for a significant amount of time for some of these big companies because of this cyber attack, not because of a ground invasion or a nuclear strike, but because of this thing in the computer. So we're starting to see this affect regular people more, but it's still pretty scattershot as far as, you know, has your son's school been ransomwared, right? Did your daughter have to cancel an elective surgery because of a cyber attack on a hospital? That is still where it's hitting people the hardest. We're not yet seeing that. It's widespread, but it's not yet to the point where every single American is like, well, this is in my top 5 issues. And I don't know that it ever will be, but it's still a challenge to communicate about this to a lot of folks.
Well, you're doing a good job. Thank you. Themessenger.com. We're going to take a little break, come back with more with our great panel. Speaking of sexy, I want to find out how I can make it with Carlac, but I think we're going to find out with Brianna Wu in just a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit about AI as well. But first, I want to mention our club. Just like the Messenger, just like 404, we rely on our audience to pay the bills and to keep things going. For a long time, we were an ad-supported network. We still are. Love our advertisers, but ad dollars just don't go far enough to keep this podcast network going. And that's why we started Club Twit about 2 years ago. Very happy to have the 7,000 of you who are in Club Twit as members, but that's only 1% of the audience. And I'd like to get you involved. So let me give you the pitch. $7 a month. I'll start right up with price up front. We do have family plans and corporate plans that have discounts. And of course, there's an $84 a year, year-long plan if you just want to pay once every year. What do you get? You get ad-free versions of all of our shows. You're paying us, so we don't need to have ads. We don't have any tracking or any ads in any of the shows. Plus shows you don't get unless you're a member of the club. Hands on Macintosh with Micah Sargent, Hands on Windows with Paul Thurrott. The Untitled Linux Show. We couldn't afford a title for it, but we can do the show. Jonathan Bennett is the host of that. The Giz Fizz with Dick D. Bartolo. We have a title, but it's a cheap title. It doesn't matter. The point is, if you sponsor us, we will put more of these shows on the air. We just brought back Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson. We couldn't really afford to do it because advertisers and the audience just weren't large enough to put that show on. But thanks to the club members, we can. And that's the kind of thing we can do with Club Twit. You also get access to, I think, the best social network ever, which is the Club Twit Discord, a place where you can converse with other Club Twit members, talk about the shows that are on the air, have champagne, whatever. It is the kind of the champagne room of the Twit Club. It also has more animated GIFs than a body can stand. What else do you get? Oh, you get the Twit Plus feed, which includes content that we don't put out as shows at all, things that happen before and after the shows, things like that. Here's how you do it. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. $7 a month. It helps us out. It really keeps us on the air. And I think you're going to get your money's worth because we put together a lot of value-added stuff, including events. I couldn't come because I was exposed to COVID. I could not come to the photo walk yesterday. I really wanted to, but Aunt Pruitt did a great Petaluma photo walk yesterday. I hope you guys went and had fun. Stacy's Book Club is coming up on Thursday. Translation State is the book. If you like sci-fi, tune in September 7th for a fireside chat with Daniel Suarez and Hugh Howey, two of our favorite sci-fi authors. Host of This Week in Enterprise Tech, Doesn't Ask Me Anything, Lou Maresca, end of the month. Another sci-fi author, John Scalzi. Wow. We'll be stopping by October 5th. Anthony Nielsen, our AI guru, will do an Inside Twit. We're going to also do, speaking of Inside Twits, they're calling it the Old Farts Fireside Chat. I'm a little insulted, but that's me and Jeff Jarvis and Doc Searles. We will all get together on a day that will live in infamy, December 7th. Also, Renee Ritchie comes back for a fireside chat. Those are some of the events that are going
awesome.
on. Yeah, I love Renee. In the Club Twit. $7 a month. It's worth it, folks, and it really helps us out a lot. Plus, you get that good feeling in your heart knowing you've done something to support what we do. Thank you in advance. On we go with the show. Baldur's Gate 3. Have you speed run this? This is the hot game right now.
This is too huge to speed run.
You can't speed. There are
everything.
speed runners.
Yeah.
There are people doing that, though.
I'm sure you could do it, but this is very similar to the Mass Effect trilogy in the sense it's a beautiful, interesting story with deep characterizations. If you're speed running it, you're missing everything that makes it special. So no, I will not be speed running this game.
I played a little bit on my Linux box, but I'm waiting till the Mac version comes out, which I think is September 5th, which is nice. This is a turn-based RPG that's apparently very much like D&D. Is that right, Brianna?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the combat in it is a little bit clunky. It's not the best feature of it.
I don't like turn-based combat. I hate it.
But it's pseudo turn-based. It's more like a Final Fantasy active time battle system.
Yeah.
Like everybody moves across the board at X number of spaces. The real reason to play this is it is a very, very deeply written game that is truly one of the best fantasy stories I've ever played through. This is really rivaling Dragon Age as far as quality. So that's the reason people love it. It's been a long time since we had a really good narrative game, especially with the BioWare layoffs that were announced this week. I think this is the best we're going to have for a while.
Oh, that's bad news.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on the Microsoft acquisition of Activision?
I'm really neutral on it. I think it could hurt. I think it could help.
I hate to see. On the one hand, it won't make Microsoft the number one gaming company in the world or anything close to it. But on the other hand, I hate to see any kind of shrinkage in the number of companies doing this stuff. Bobby Kotick and Activision Blizzard were kind of nightmare companies and certainly could use some adult supervision. I don't know if
I think there's the argument that certainly I think we'd agree less competition is bad in the video game industry.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm in deep with the game dev crowd, right? There's a really good argument that Microsoft Game Pass has been very good for small size studios because it gives them a funding way to make a 10, 20, $30 million game in a way that couldn't have existed, just a few years ago. So I do think it's good for smaller studios, this particular model. How long Microsoft can keep it up is all another question, though.
They are not apparently making any money on Xbox.
Exactly.
But Xbox Game Pass really is, at least for people who want to try a lot of different games, the best way to go, because for basically the cost of one AAA title a year, or maybe two, you get to play hundreds of games, which is good for me because I'm not like Paul Thurrott where it's Call of Duty or nothing. I do want to. I play. I played Baldur's Gate a little bit, Diablo 4 a little bit. I want to try them all out. And so Game Pass is a really good solution, at least for those games. I'm looking forward to Starfield, which will be available day and date.
Yeah, I can't wait for that
on Xbox. So that's going to be.
I do think it's a fair argument that they've not put out the kind of high quality first party titles that you want over there. Like PlayStation 5 just does have better games. I'm sorry. So, the GoldenEye remake was really, really good on Game Pass. I certainly felt like that justified it for the year for me. But it's hurting, right? It's really struggling. I wish them the best, but I don't have strong feelings because it could go either way.
That's interesting. Yeah. Sony was the one complaining about the Activision acquisition because they were afraid that Microsoft would take some of those games exclusive to Xbox. Microsoft assured them it wouldn't, and apparently reassured regulators, certainly reassured the court in the United States, where the judge basically threw out the FTC's case against the merger. We're just waiting now for the UK to come along, and I guess Microsoft has attempted to appease the UK regulator by selling off the Activision cloud gaming rights to Ubisoft, which is a French firm, but maybe that's better than an American firm. I don't know.
I have to ask, were you joking about Paul Theroux playing COD?
He actually was such a bad Call of Duty addict for so many years that 6 months ago he went cold turkey.
Really?
He literally
He's
said,
missing the new Nicki Minaj expansion pack over there.
I know. I saw that and I said, I'm not going to tell Paul. I'm not going to tell Paul. Nicki gets to play an existing character, right?
Yep. In Call of Duty, so you get to play as her in multiplayer mode with her pink guns and everything. It's great.
She's your operator.
That's right.
Does she sound like Nicki Minaj? Or no, it's just
sounds
a
exactly
skin.
like her.
No, she does.
It's a skin. Yeah. It's voiced by her as far as I can tell. It's glorious and stupid, and I love it. But that's the same game that had Homelander in it just a few weeks ago.
They've done it before. Let's play a little. Let's play a little Nicki Minaj Call of Duty.
God is that.
Excuse me with the bad language.
You know, really just gonna sit here? They're like right on my
Well, yeah.
Right behind you.
Nicki Minaj is in the game.
Let's go get it. Oh. Where are they?
This is cartoon violence. Do not.
Bitch, you're mad as one.
Oh man, gamers, what are we gonna do with them?
I felt we were doing a good job keeping this a family-friendly show.
We're gonna bleep the hell out of that. That's all. That's all I can
always
say.
rely on Call of Duty.
I apologize. It's all my fault.
Actually, Microsoft's been trying to shut down all of the trash talk on Xbox. Good luck. Good luck with that. Oh my goodness.
Oh boy, I have opinions on that.
Are you not a trash talker?
No, I don't do that in multiplayer games. I'm trying to lead my team to greatness.
You're a nice person. Yeah.
No, I'm not a nice person. It just doesn't give me the outcome I want.
Oh, okay. That's no way to win.
You show leadership by stepping up and talking, like giving your team instructions, like offering.
I would love to be in a multiplayer game with you sometime. That would be.
We would do great.
Hysterical.
I've thought a lot about going into Club Twit sometime, and my game is Alien Fireteam. I love that game. I love that game.
Just give us an hour. Play that game for an hour.
100%. Come roll. Like, we'll just come roll, and I'll walk you through the first mission.
That would be awesome.
Kill a bunch of aliens. I'll do that anytime.
My son is so he saw me playing Valheim because I'm a don't laugh at me. I'm a loser.
I love it. No, I love your passion.
It's a great Viking build. It's Viking. I call it Minecraft for Vikings. Yeah. And he said, you should just play this on Twitch. You'd make a lot of money. I said, no one wants to see me play Valheim, but maybe you and me, you can give me some pointers on that.
But Aliens Fireteam, it is really, so it's a 3-person squad-based game. So you, me, and someone else will get Lisa to come on in. So you have different roles. There's gunner, there's like the person with the smart gun, there's a medic, and you really have to go through a hive of aliens and survive. And it is really hard. It's really, really hard.
So we'll all be like like Overwatch. We'll all be on a team together. Is that it?
Yeah, but it's versus virtual.
Do you promise not to yell at me if I don't?
I promise not to do it.
I might curl up into a ball and just scream like a girl. And
this is where you show who you are. When the chips are
That's
down,
who I am.
Are you going to stand up and kill the aliens, or are you going to panic?
That's who I am. I'm going to panic.
There we go.
Yep. Game over. Game over, man. That's me. Okay, that looks like fun.
So good.
It's really great. Do you guys play games? Didn't mean to take over the show.
No, I played Warzone a lot with a bunch of my colleagues. So got really into Warzone 1. Never really enjoyed Warzone 2. So I play a lot of roguelikes on my Switch.
Ooh, nice.
Really what I do.
What's your favorite on Switch right now?
So I put probably 300 or 400 hours into Enter the Gungeon, which I 100%ed that game. Like I played so much of it. I've really been enjoying Monster Train, which is a roguelike deck builder.
I'm not a deck fan. I don't mind rogue-like games. I don't want to build a deck. And if I wanted to play cards, I'd do it with Lisa. I don't need to. I don't want to do a card. This looks like fun, though. This is so silly looking. You have how many hours on this?
Something like 300 hours. It's a very hard game, and it's I got pretty addicted to it.
There's smoking in it, which is interesting.
Yeah, everything is gun themed. Well, yeah, it's a bullet.
Oh, I get it. I see it. Yeah. Interesting. That looks like fun.
Yeah.
How about you, Eric? Do you do any gaming at all, or what do you do in your downtime?
I'm not a huge gamer. The one game I do drop into every now and then is the original RuneScape. I reactivated my account a few years ago, and I was like,
game.
"This is so fun! I'm gonna drop back into it." So it's really, it takes a lot of time and grinding to level up and all the different skills. So I will not claim to be one of the most advanced RuneScape players, but it's just kind of fun. It's nostalgic. It brings me back to that early 2000s era of my life, and having a clan, and doing missions or whatever. So that's the extent of my gaming. I guess also Wordle, does that count as a game?
Wordle counts.
Call that a game?
It's legit.
Wordle counts.
All right.
What are your opening 2 words?
2 words.
I do beast and then I do chump, and I find that gets me a pretty good slate.
So I always do tears, which is almost an acronym of, anagram of beast. B. I never thought of B so much. What do you do? Crony?
I go salé and then crony.
What's salé? Is that a word?
It's a French helmet. I don't know.
Now, do you folks play on hard mode, which is where you can't guess letters that you've already gotten out?
I didn't even know there was a hard mode. It just did it by default. And somebody had to explain that to me. That's how you play, right? That's the only sensible.
That's the only way true connoisseurs play Wordle, Leo.
Yeah, you wouldn't guess a letter that you already know is not. Why? Do it right. Use the letters you know and figure out the rest.
That's right.
Seems only fair. I find it's actually escapist for me. And the worse the world got, I really didn't get into Valheim until COVID. And then when the world really went to hell in a handbasket, I created a new life for myself as a Viking. And I'm every once in a while I go back and visit, the good old days. RuneScape's better like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I still think I bet you could sell this to Lisa if you get her that Godzilla pinball table. I'm trying to get you to do.
She does not want me to get that. Every time you bring that up, she says no.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
I really want it. How much? $10,000?
$10,000, but worth it. Totally worth it.
That's a lot of money for a pinball game.
But it's Godzilla.
If I charge people
it's an
quarters,
investment.
It's an investment.
It is an investment.
What's the payoff if I invest?
I have plenty of pinball machines that have gone up in money since I bought them. My Twilight Zone has gone up. My Star Trek has gone up. Godzilla, if I sold it today, it'd probably be a wash with what I paid for it.
All right. Okay. Let's take a break and come back with final words as we wrap up what has been a very fun edition of the show. We're really glad to have 2 new folks to prey on. Eric Geller from The Messenger. It's great to have you. TheMessenger.com, cybersecurity reporter. And Jason Kebler. He's the editor-in-chief at 404 Media, which I seriously did just join. You've sold me. I want to support you guys. 404media.co.
The other folks are making fun of me because we decide we're all equal to start. So not editor-in-chief.
Oh,
I'm a
journalist.
Co-founder.
You're a journalist. Yes. There's no higher state than a journalist. You were
that was
EIC.
Part of it, though.
You were at EIC, a motherboard, though, right?
I was, yes.
So you're kind of de facto EIC.
No. We're taking a flat approach.
That won't last. Yeah. Okay.
There's a Heinlein line. The boss is the one that does the bossing. So who does the bossing at 404?
I love the.
BD.
You must have had fun during the photo shoot. Like you're doing your album. Right.
That was so very surreal. Thousands of photos of us. I don't think I'm going to go into modeling, although I don't know. I look pretty fierce here.
Pretty fierce. It's almost a mugshot fierce. You look good. If
I'm literally in a dumpster in this photo.
Wait a minute, you are.
Yeah.
But you managed to keep it serious.
Was that an empty dumpster? Did they stage this, or did they just bring you to a dumpster and say, "Okay, go ahead and get in"?
So we took the photos with a friend of ours who's a professional photographer.
Yeah, this is beautifully shot.
Yeah, she put us in a dumpster. She put us in a flower pot. She made me climb a ledge. I think she was really seeing what our limit was and didn't find it. The dumpster was the last objects we tried.
Yeah, because here you are, the New York Times.
Like, whatever you
want.
want.
Is this the same photo shoot, or did the Times send their own
photographer? This was immediately before.
Oh, okay.
Times had their own photographer. This was immediately before in a studio. And then we did some photos sort of nearby with another photographer.
The Times of late in these photos has done some sort of weird gray wash across all their photos. Compare that to the bright, vivacious colors of your own album cover. It's just, I don't understand why the Times does this. Maybe they're the gray lady, they're serious. I don't know. But I've noticed this with other photos. That they've started, look at that, it's so gloomy.
Needs a dumpster. It's just missing a dumpster.
It's missing a bright red dumpster. That's what you need.
Exactly. Right. We all had a freak out over what to wear as well. The group chat was just going crazy, you know.
I just love that. I know if I show up and ask you to get in a dumpster, you will say yes now. So that's very helpful.
Serious doing it. I love it.
That's where you do your best bossing, is from the dumpster.
You're not editor-in-chief now, man.
Exactly.
You're in the dumpster now.
I'm the one being bossed now. Yeah.
All right. And of course, Brianna Wu, it's always great to have you. RebellionPack.org. Tell me what that does. It sounds like you're talking to influencers. By the way, it's .com. I'm sorry, not .org. You're talking to influencers to get them involved in the political process.
That's exactly right. We're going to, if you follow Twitch politics at all, just pay attention to the news cycle. There's going to be something that's going to come out in a few weeks, and you're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I did it. So just stay tuned in this space. We're going to, I'm really proud of the work I'm doing. We had the Wisconsin SCOTUS special election. With using the work I'm doing, we managed to get over 50,000 phone calls done, over 10,000 doors knocked on in just a weekend. So this is a playbook that works, getting younger people involved through their favorite Twitch streamers.
There is actually a Twitch politics subject. This is you were talking about.
Yep.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of stuff in Russian here.
Yeah, I think that may not be the right channels. I'm thinking more Destiny, Vosh, Hassan,
okay, good.
People like that.
All right. Yeah,
Majority Report.
Politics is politics, Yeah. Interesting. I think you're right. I think young people, I look at my son, 29. Happy birthday, Henry. He'll be 29 tomorrow. I got in the car. He's listening to Joe Rogan. I said, what are you listening to that crap for? He said, Dad, I don't believe it. I just listened to it.
It's good intelligence to listen to people you disagree with. I do it all the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what he says he's doing. AOC's coming back to Twitch. She played Among Us. She's gonna be a regular stream.
Ooh, look at that. You may want to pay attention to this space. She may not be the only member of Congress doing this.
There's a hint. Wow. I will look forward to Dark Brandon's Twitch channel. I think that's going to be...
You might want to pay attention to that,
That would be interesting. Joe Biden plays Among Us.
Look, this election is we got young people, the youngs.
We got to get the youngs to vote.
We got to get past this idea in the Democratic Party that the only way to get your message out is going on CNN. It's a dead playbook. I enjoy every time I go on CNN, but we got to try some new stuff.
I honestly think that the 24-hour news networks, all of them, have ended up being a bust. That this was a bad idea, and there are better ways to get our information.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know if Twitch is it, but okay. When Dark Brandon does his Baldur Gate 3 run, I will be watching that with great interest.
You should.
I'm going to decide how to vote based on that. If you missed anything this week on Twit, well, you missed a mouthful. Watch, we made a little bit. Does that look like me? I don't think that looks like me. Does that look like me?
Those biceps are a little bit too big to be yours.
I don't know why I keep saying I'm a man. I don't know why I keep doing that. Well, let's put it this way. Dustin Hoffman said in Tootsie, he said the only hard thing about being a woman was how ugly I was.
Previously on Twit. Tech News Weekly.
I have in my hot hands here the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5. I give you my full thoughts on this in a detailed review.
This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Today we talked with Michael Amori, CEO of Virtualytics, and he talked about AI and how it's impacting data access and analytics.
You need to make sure that the AI explains why it is that you should believe something before you move on to the next thing. They need to be explained, and that's kind of the ethical part of AI, making sure that everything is really explainable, understandable for the human.
This Week in Google.
Incredible New Yorker profile of Elon Musk by Ronan Farrow. The title of the article, Elon Musk's Shadow Rule.
Musk is involved in the national highway system in terms of the electrification of the fleet. He's involved in our space program. He's involved in
speech
communications. Right, exactly. But with both X and also with Starlink. I don't think that we've ever had a wealthy person who has so much control over the fundamental things that government historically has been involved in.
Twit. Broadcasting from the capital of the free world, Petaluma, California.
No, that's not true. It's not even the capital of California.
I was up there a few months ago. A beautiful.
Oh, you came to the wine country? Thank you, Jason. Next time, come by and say hi. Yeah, we're in Sonoma. Yeah. Sonoma County, Petaluma. Did you go to the Napa County? You probably went up to the Napa County.
No, my friend lives in Petaluma.
Oh, you're kidding.
He's a big cyclist, so I was in downtown Petaluma. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I think I saw him go by the other day. It was a guy on a bicycle.
Probably did. Yeah, he was.
In a morning bun. Yeah. The Supreme Court in 2014 ruled that phone searches, your smartphone, require warrants. However, subsequent court rulings have been unclear one way or another. There's a new ruling from the Fifth Circuit that scares me just a little bit. The case we talked about it when it happened. Immigration lawyer named Adam Malek crossed the border from Mexico into Texas, and the Department of Homeland Security and the CBP, the Border Patrol, seized his phone in response to Mr. Malek's assertion of privilege. He's an attorney, remember. He said, hey, attorney-client privilege, there's privileged communications on this device. Officer Sullivan informed Mr. Malek that the DHS was seizing the iPhone and the digital contents would be searched. Officer Sullivan did not disconnect the iPhone from the internet or the communications network. He failed to take action that would protect the iPhone from accessing the internet or a communications network. He ordered Mr. Malek to leave the deferred inspection area without the phone while the phone was connected to the internet. The reason that's important is because you could go through all the email. There's stuff the phone's connected to, and when it's unlocked, you have access to it. Furthermore, they kept the phone for 5 months. They sent it to a lab for forensic analysis, bypassing the security features, extracting the phone's data, sent the data to the DHS. They then used a filter team to screen out any privileged materials. That took additional 2 months. Once the filter team had finished, they provided the border officers in Dallas with 2 thumb drives containing the data the filter team had determined was not privileged. 5 months later, he gets his phone back. He sues. He says there was no warrant. There was no probable cause. I am, in fact, a member of Global Entry. He was. Fifth Circuit said, no, you're going across the border, dude. You have no protection from the Fourth Amendment. No warrant is needed. Now, I have to point out, there's been case law on both sides of this. This is the most recent. This is really bad news. We reported this story when it happened, and it seemed an appalling abuse of power. That because he was an immigration lawyer, the DHS decided to effectively harass him.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, that the court has ruled that it was legal.
You know, it's really confusing to me. I truly do not understand why there's not more political willpower to make personal privacy a bigger election issue. I think it transcends parties. I think most people understand that technology has unprecedented power in our lives. And I think, even within the Republican Party nowadays, I think you see a lot of suspicion over this kind of warrantless collection of information like this. So it seems to me that this would be a very popular initiative to codify this in the law. It's truly baffling to me we don't see more progress on this.
Yeah, we've seen over and over again that the Constitution doesn't quite exist at the border and doesn't exist in areas near the border.
Yeah.
By the way, that's significant too.
That.
I think they said within 35 miles of the border, which includes pretty much everybody living on the coast of the United States. I mean, it's a huge percentage of the population. They're asserting, oh, you don't have any Fourth Amendment rights.
Right. I mean, the ACLU calls it a 100-mile border zone and says nearly 2 out of 3 Americans live within this special.
It's 100 miles?
So, I mean, that's what ACLU says.
Wow.
I think I didn't read this entire decision, so I'm not sure if they changed it.
That's shocking
at all in this. But yeah, I mean, they call it a quote unquote reasonable distance from the border that, CBP has.
And believe me, they're going to use this. I mean, this is a really powerful tool for them. And I think that one thing that some of the courts have realized is your smartphone contains your life. This isn't the equivalent of searching your briefcase, especially if you don't disconnect it from the internet. Yeah, this is disappointing. I guess the lesson from this is if you are crossing the border into the United States, and I suppose it's true in other countries as well, you probably should carry erase data, disconnect it from the internet, maybe carry a dummy phone with you. He was not accused of any crime and, in fact, has not been charged with any crime.
Yeah.
There was, I think,
very disturbing stuff.
Harassment.
Clearly.
Yeah. I think I've run out of stories. I'm desperately trying to find something to talk about, but it is late August, the dog days. Let me ask all three of you what's coming up in the fall on your docket. I'll start with you, Eric. What are you looking at for the next few months?
Well, in terms of what's happening in my world, Congress has to pass some big bills that could be used to do a lot of things on cybersecurity. I mentioned earlier that Pentagon spending bill. That's been a place where they've put a lot of stuff on cybersecurity. So I'm going to be watching what they're doing on AI, on trying to build up the military's cyber sort of war fighting, teams. There've been kind of a shortfall of troops who are ready to do that work. So they're trying to fix that. So watching what Congress does with these bills to try to improve our posture to deal with a lot of cybersecurity threats. That's gonna take up a lot of my attention, and then also turning to the election season and looking at how the government is getting ready to defend our election systems from any hackers that might try to come from within the United States or outside the United States. Those are a couple of the things on my radar.
Yeah, Pentagon's asking for $886 billion for fiscal year 2024. I'm sorry, $831 billion. It's changed. Will be very interesting. There are earmarks in there too, aren't there? They stick stuff in there because who's gonna say no to this defense spending?
Yeah, there's a lot of fights right now over abortion access for U.S. service members. That's holding up this bill.
Tommy Tuberville, good old Tommy.
Yeah. He's my old football coach. I cannot believe my
you went to UMiss. That's right. Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. He was my old football coach there. Really weird to see him hurting our national security.
And what position did you play on the team?
Yes, me. I was obviously the quarterback.
Yeah, yes. Of course. Yeah. He's taken an interesting position. I can't imagine that's a popular position even with his constituents. Maybe it is. What are you working on, Jason, for the fall is about to begin?
Yeah, I mean, we are experimenting with what our subscribers are going to enjoy having us do. I mean, we're focused primarily on doing breaking news, doing really important cybersecurity, hacking, privacy, surveillance type stuff.
Good.
Also
revealing Taylor Swift's code name. Very
That's important. What I was going to say.
Breaking news.
I've become obsessed with the Freedom of Information Act.
Is this a FOIA request? Wait a minute.
This was a FOIA request, yeah. So,
oh my God.
Public records obtained by 404 Media. Who do you go to get Eras Tour information from?
Right. So I've written a lot about Ticketmaster and about ticket scalping in general. And so most of the venues that she played are publicly owned football stadiums, because
including our own Levi Stadium here. Yep.
Taxpayers buy the stadiums and then lease them out for pennies on the dollar to these football teams, obviously. And so I just FOIA'd every single stadium authority in the country that she played at. And I got not as many emails back as I would have liked, because a lot of these leases are designed to prevent public records from being accessible, specifically because they have carve-outs in the law that won't allow for public records to come out about the operations of these football stadiums. That wasn't the case in Ohio, though, and I got some emails from Taylor Swift's team about how they planned the Eras Tour. So they were calling it the Sparkle Tour before it was announced.
That was the code name. So the
code name was Sparkle.
Yeah.
They weren't using Taylor's name. They only one person was allowed to make graphics for the promotional graphics.
Wow.
So only one person was read into that. And then basically the night before is when a lot of people found out, people who worked at the different stadiums found out that this was actually happening. So I didn't get as much as I wanted. I really wanted to know how many tickets were actually available for sale in different pre-sales, because
that's fascinating. You say that in the 2009 tour in Nashville, of the 13,000 tickets available, 11,000 were sold in pre-sale. Only a couple of thousand were available during the actual public sale.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are held back either for normal types of pre-sales. Like there was a Capital One pre-sale for Taylor Swift where Capital One pays, Ticketmaster and pays Taylor Swift to give premier access to their card holders. But then there's radio holds, there's, tickets given to VIPs, there's tickets given to sponsors, and there's this spreadsheet that exists for every show that should show how many tickets actually were available to the public, which is what I'm searching for. It's my holy grail of ticket.
Do you want to give out your signal number in case somebody wants to leak this to you?
You know what? I do. Why not?
Yeah, let's take down Ticketmaster. I'm 100% behind this one. These guys
it's 202-505-1702.
202-505-1702. If you know what's going on, the inside scoop on the Eras Tour, text Jason.
Let me know.
I'm just going to signal you a bunch of pictures of butts.
Stop it.
Whatever you want.
No. What do you think this is? Blue sky? Knock it off.
100%. Sorry.
Knock it off. No pictures of butts or of alien entities. None of that. No ALF pictures, please. No, this is good. At first I kind of thought this is cute and funny, but now that you mention this is about Ticketmaster, there is something nasty under the hood there. That is
for sure.
I would love to blow the lid off of them. Well, that's why I'm paying $100 a year for 404 Media, worth every penny.
Thank you for your support.
I couldn't do the $1,000 tier. I'm sorry. 404media.co. But I think I really love to support these kinds of entities. I think this is fantastic. And I love the investigative journalism you've done over the years at Motherboard. I'd love to see you continue here in your own venue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lots more FOIA stuff to come, lots more rights to repair stuff to come. This week, there's going to be a bunch of filings for DMCA exemptions for different devices to make it legal to repair them.
Oh.
So that happens every 3 years. That's something I'll be keeping my eye on.
And you guys do a podcast. Who's on the 404 Media podcast? All four of you?
So it's all of us, yeah. Right. So Joseph Cox is our security and hacking reporter. Samantha Cole covers AI and sex work. Emmanuel Myberg covers kind of everything, news, AI, porn again, which we don't have tons of stuff about porn, but we do cover it a lot because a lot of the advances in technology are pioneered by sex workers and porn companies, and then they sort of filter down into the broader tech ecosystem. So
it's just fun to cover.
We ran through that lens.
It's just fun. The parties are great. I don't blame you.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, actually, there's some sleazy, skeezy stories in that area as well.
Sure, especially with AI generated stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
That just killed the whole show energy right there.
No, I just
sorry. No, so our podcast is the 404 Media Podcast. If you search it in your favorite podcast app, it will show up.
Nice.
I love it.
Nice. I forgot to ask, Eric, you do a podcast too, don't you?
I do. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I co-host a Star Wars podcast called Hoth Takes.
Do you?
I saw Hoth Takes, and I thought, he's got a Hoth take on that. Let me tell you. Go ahead, tell us.
It's a mixed bag. The lead actress is not good. There's only one really good cast member. The writing is uneven. The pacing is uneven. It's got some promise on the story front, but it's got a long way to go. So you can listen to Hoth Takes.
I'm starting my own podcast. How your podcast sucks now.
I'm ready for a podcast where we can drive up both our numbers that way.
This is awesome.
Let's do it. I'm about to go off. Okay, Ahsoka is okay. So look, I get you have to have seen Rebels. I will completely grant it to understand anything going on in Ahsoka, but this is like all of the most amazing women in Star Trek and Star Wars in like one show, and they all get an arc and it rewards you for like following Ahsoka and her whole storyline for years. And it's just this
it's no Andor. Now come on, let's be honest.
It's not Andor. It's
nothing
not Andor.
will be Andor.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. But it is come on, it's better than Obi-Wan.
Well, not a high bar to clear, but yeah.
Fair.
These are some hot takes though. I appreciate
this is good. Hoth Takes, H-O-T. I get it. When I saw it, I thought, what is there? Did you misspell that? Is there an extra H? No, it's Hoth. Get it? The winter planet. Hoth.
Who is the bad actress?
I'll never forget.
Rosario Dawson is just not a good Ahsoka. I'm sorry. She sounds too wooden and stoic. She doesn't have the warmth and the wit that Ahsoka had in the animated series. She just doesn't.
That is fair. Okay. Fine.
Now I want to watch it though, just for, if she's really awful, that'd be great.
I think she's trying to be like a more mature version of Ahsoka, because we saw her when she was like a literal child, right? And we've seen her get more serious and deal with trauma all the years and leave the Jedi. And now she is kind of like the Jedi Masters in Star Wars are not like pouring with emotion. And that's kind of the point where we see her here. I agree there are ways she could put more personality into it, though.
I think we need This Week in Star Wars, Leo. I think you're seeing
I think so. I think so. So when is your Ahsoka podcast coming out? Because the last one you did was last month. So
I co-host this with two journalists who are obviously like myself, busy fitting this in between our actual day jobs. So recording episodes, we don't have the ability to, this is not our job like Twit, unfortunately. So we're going to try to I think we're going to wait and do an Ahsoka episode after the show is over. Unfortunately, I know all the loyal Hoth Take listeners are devastated to hear that they won't get an episode on this for a few months, but we want to watch it in retrospect. Yeah.
Hoth Takes, HOTHTAKES.wordpress.com. Eric Geller, Grace Seegers, and Haley Bird-Wilt. This is great. I will be listening. Thank you so much, Eric. And of course, Brianna Wu, we mentioned Rebellion Pack. What else? You got I should mention your podcast, Rocket, on Relay.fm.
The best podcast, the best non-Twit podcast. So much better than Hoth Takes, our Star Wars takes, by the way.
Wow.
No, this is a show we make with Christina Warren, who
you're just trying to start a beef war so that you guys both.
I gotta get my ratings.
I know.
Let's do it.
I know what's going on.
Obviously you see Christina on Twit all the time. She elevates.
You never see Simone because she never responds to our email.
I will bother Simone. I think the best episode.
We'll do another
Twit is when
takeover.
we came and took it over.
I've watched RRR now, so I could play that game. That was a tough one, I tell you. Yeah.
What am I working on right now? So in addition to having meetings with the House, the Senate, the Biden campaign, I'm working on the AFC project. This is Americans for Contraception. We're working to codify access to birth control at the state level. This is what I really enjoy about this is so much of my work is just pushing for one party to win. Birth control should be a completely nonpartisan issue. Yes. The right-wing argument for it is it's a freedom issue. The government should not be able to sit down and
nobody should be able to tell me.
Your access to condoms or or
Plan B,
all this stuff.
For crying 100%. Out loud.
So it's a freedom issue. I love this project. We're really being very successful in, first getting people to understand there's a real threat to birth control access in this country in the aftermath of Dobbs. So I'm really excited to be working on that. A bigger project.
By the way, if you don't succeed in this Wall Street Journal headline is going to become true everywhere. A sperm donor chases a role in the lives of the 96 children he's fathered. Okay, that's a good argument for contraception right there.
That's really troubling stuff. I was going to say one of my big missions this time around for 2024, and just to give you a really blunt assessment of my own party. If you're looking at who funds the Democratic Party, it tends to be the same people from the tech industry that write giant checks every single cycle. A lot has changed in our party since the Obama years, and a lot has changed as far as who has been successful. So one of my projects I'm going to be working on this time around is to put together a coalition of donors to basically push issues like cybersecurity on a federal level and to be very involved in this election this time around. So please pay attention to that. We're going to be very successful. The only voice you have in politics is the policies you actually get in there and fight for. And that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I just wish you the best because you're fighting the good fight. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, Brianna Wu. Find out more at rebellionpact.com and rocket at relay.fm. Thanks.
And hofftakesucks.com. Please go.
Wow. Trying to get that in at the last minute. All right.
Here we go.
Ow. What do you got against a Togruta female who was a force-sensitive outcast from the Jedi Order? What do you have against her?
I love Ahsoka. I'm a Ahsoka defender.
Yeah. You just don't like Rosario Dawson. That's all.
No, I'm the one I'm pro Ahsoka but anti Rosario Dawson, but that's a whole separate.
Again, that's another
get
segment.
This Week in Star Wars. Yeah.
You should come on Rocket and we'll just get all this out.
That's a good idea.
We'll talk it out. It'll be good.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Get the beef. Where's the beef? Thank you, Eric, Jason, Brianna. Thank you all for joining us. We do Twit every Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. You can watch us do it live at live.twit.tv. There's audio and video there. If you're watching live, chat live in the IRC at irc.twit.tv. Club Twit members, of course, have access beyond the velvet rope to the Club Twit Discord. We watch both chats as we're doing the show. After the fact, you can download the show at our website, twit.tv. There's a dedicated YouTube channel to This Week in Tech. But I think the best way to get it is to subscribe in your favorite podcast player. That way you don't have to think about it. You just know Monday morning, got a brand new Twit, and you can listen to it. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you next time. As I have been saying now, I think I forgot last week, by the way. Somebody said you didn't say it last week. So I'll say it twice for this week. I've been doing it for 18 years. Another Twit is in the can. Another Twit is in the can.
This
Bye-bye.
is amazing.